Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Development Management Committee. I have a few bits to say. There are no fire drills planned. So if the fire alarm is activated, which is a continuous siren with a flashing red light, please leave the building immediately and follow the fire exit signs. Services, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. We've had an apology for absence from Councillor Edwards-Windsor.
Thank you. And do we have a substitution for him? No. Okay, thank you. Excuse me. In which case, I'd like to move item 1, which is to approve the minutes of our last meeting. All those in favour of them being a true record? Anybody against? That's carried, thank you. We just scribble a signature on the back. Thank you. Right. Item 2 on our agenda is to ask if there are any... Sorry, Sue, can I help you? Ah, right, okay. Are there any declarations of interest or predetermination? Councillor Camp.
Thank you. Item 4.3, Crawshay Close. I chaired the planning meeting when it came in front of the Town Council, but I wasn't required to use my casting vote and I remain impartial.
Thank you. Councillor Granville.
Thank you. It's the same application. Crawshay Close, I was at the planning meeting, but I remain open-minded tonight.
And Councillor Shay.
Same application, Chair. I remain open-minded, of course.
Thank you. Are there any others for any of the others? No, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, declarations of lobbying. Right, Councillor Malone. 4.1. Councillor Hudson. Anybody else in the back row? Councillor Solander. Councillor White.
4.1, thank you.
Councillor Barker. Hang on, is there anybody who hasn't been lobbied on 4.1? Let's do it the other way around. Councillor Darrington. Okay, so everybody else has been lobbied, including me. Councillor Ball. Okay, thank you.
May I add 4.3 to my list there for lobbying?
Yes, of course you may. Thank you. So are there any other declarations of lobbying? No, you've got all those for? Right, so now we move on to the meat of this evening, which is the planning applications. I'm going to ask, first of all, from the chair, if there are any members who would like to call for debate item 4.4, because it's only in fact in front of us because it's a councillor's application. If there's nobody who wants to call it in, I will move it from the chair as per the officer's recommendation. Nobody wants to? In that case, I move from the chair as per officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Anybody against? No. Fine. Thank you. Right. So now we get on to item 4.1. And I'd like to ask Ashley if you'd like to present this application to us, please.
Thank you, Chair, and evening members. Item 4.1 is for the demolition of the existing property and the construction of 27 dwellings with associated parking, landscaping and infrastructure. The area outlined in red is the application site. The site is located to the east of Greenlands Road and comprises of an existing dwelling known as the Laurels, its garden and a separate parcel of land to the east. The site is bounded by existing residential development along Greenlands Road and Noah's Ark. It falls within the Greenbelt and lies near to the National Landscape, which starts on the eastern side of Noah's Ark and also south of the railway line. This plan shows the existing buildings associated with the Laurels. And this is the proposed site plan. All of the existing buildings and structures would be removed from the site, and 27 dwellings would be erected together with associated developments such as boundary fencing, landscaping and parking. The majority of the dwellings would be terraced or semi-detached, There will be one detached dwelling in the northwestern corner of the site, close to the existing development along Greenlands Road and just to the rear of the footprint of the current dwelling on site. This shows the proposed 10-year plan. So 50% of the dwellings would be affordable, as indicated here. However, the finer details would be secured as part of any legal agreement. Moving on to the access plan. The access is to be improved as part of the development, comprising of an extension to Greenlands Road as shown. This plan shows the provision of parking across the site, including visitor parking spaces and cycle storage. It's all in line with KCC parking standards. Similarly, we have a refuse plan with vehicle tracking to show how the refuse vehicles would be able to maneuver within the site. Kent Fire and Rescue have also reviewed this plan in terms of whether it meets their standards for emergency vehicles. Moving on to landscape strategy. So in terms of hard landscaping, this includes varying use of hard surface materials such as asphalt and paving to distinguish between the internal roads, private drives and pathways. Boundary treatments would consist of a mixture of brick walls and close boarded fencing to the rear gardens. As for soft landscaping, this would include street trees along the internal access roads and to the front of the dwellings. There would be scrub and grassland around the suds attenuation basins, amenity grassland areas and new species rich hedgerows. There would be areas of open grassland within the site, including to the front of the site, roughly where the existing property is now facing Greenlands Road. There would be a number of existing trees to be removed in order to accommodate the development, which are not protected by tree preservation orders. However, the tree officer considers that the loss of existing trees would be adequately mitigated by the proposed new tree planting. Just quickly going over some of the existing plans. So this is the existing dwelling on site, which is to be demolished. And this is the sort of the annex that sits to the side of the existing dwelling, also to be demolished. So the following sort of several slides just show the floor plans and elevations of the proposed dwellings across the development. There would be some variation in the materials and individual design and architectural detailing. The palette of materials would also vary across the dwellings, including brick color and use of white weatherboarding, etc. All of this has been reviewed by the council's urban design officer. So I'll just quickly skim through. Got plots 5 to 6 as well, 7 to 9, 10 to 13, which does include some masonettes, 14 to 16, 17 to 18, 19 to 22, 23 to 25, and finally 26 and 27. And here we just have some street scenes to sort of give an idea as to how the development would appear across various sections of the site. So the next two slides show the foul and surface water drainage across the development. The proposed drainage strategy does consist of a series of suds featured throughout the site. There's also porous paving proposed where possible. Bioretention is proposed adjacent to the roads as shown in the sort of blue lines on this map. The drainage strategy was amended during the course of the application to remove a second connection to the chalk stream, which north of the site. And so there's only a single connection to the water course being to the west of the site via a surface water drain. More on this in a moment. So runoff captured within the bioretention and porous paving will be discharged to the basin located within the northern part of the site as shown. It would temporarily store water prior to being discharged to the watercourse to the west. And then any sort of like additional storage requirements are provided within attenuation crates across the site, including the one to the by the access of the development. So this is a more sort of detailed plan as to how the development would connect to the stream to the west of the site. So it's now proposed to connect to the watercourse to the west via a culvert beneath the highway, which is all on land entirely controlled and maintained by KCC Highways. A new manhole would be installed within the footway along Greenlands Road, sort of as shown on this plan. So prior to the amendment, it was proposed to connect to the stream further west, which did include third-party land, but as explained, this is no longer the case and it's only entirely within KCC Highways land. So just moving on to some photos of the site. Here we have a view from Greenlands Road of the existing dwelling. And this is the neighbouring property to the southwest, known as Fairhaven. This is a view of the existing dwelling and Fairhaven. These are the cottages to the southwest of the site. This is a view facing up Greenlands Road. The arrow indicates a section of the culverted stream under the road. The arrow is the approximate location of where the manhole cover in question would be. It's proposed within the footpath on land controlled by KCC Highways, as explained previously. And this is part of a drainage strategy that would be subject to pre-commencement conditions as well. And this is just another view looking further up Greenlands Road. Moving on to the rear of the existing dwellings. So all of the buildings associated with the existing property would be removed. This is a view over the boundary with Fairhaven, showing the garden area of this neighbour. And this is the same sort of view, but looking the other direction towards the neighbouring property and its outbuildings. This is a view across the application site towards the other neighbouring dwelling known as New Haven. And this is a closer up sort of view of that boundary relationship. It is recommended, as detailed in the report and conditions, that further details of this boundary are secured by condition. And then this is just a wider view of the existing property as seen within the garden. And there's a sort of similar view here. Facing the other way, this is just looking towards the field associated with the wider part of the application site. And this is a view over the boundary into that field in question. This is sort of round to the far edge of the site, looking at the properties along Noah's Ark Road itself, with the site sort of behind you at this point. And this is a view of the commercial yard adjacent to the site with a recent planning permission for the demolition of the existing buildings and the construction of 7 dwellings. And a closer photo of this neighbouring site. And finally, the recommendation is for grant of permission subject to conditions and the securing of a legal agreement as detailed within the report and any late observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I'd now like to call Mr. Chris Connolly, please, to come up to the front to talk to us. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
I speak for Noah's Ark Residents Association. Effective decision-making requires considering all relevant evidence, not shaping facts to fit a preferred narrative. KCC SUDS and SDC relied entirely on the developer's case, while overlooking residents' objections, national guidance and their own commitments. A rare chalk stream, one of 210 globally, runs just north of the site, flowing through local gardens and villages before joining the River Darenth. These ecosystems are extremely fragile, highly sensitive to pollution. They rely on natural water and are harmed by unnatural chemicals. Mitigating means reducing, not eliminating pollution. Protection is increasingly reflected in planning policy with the draft NPPF, the Chalk Streams Protection Bill, and the proposals for UNESCO World Heritage status. All have cross-party support, reflecting a clear direction towards stronger safeguards. Objections from South East Rivers, Kent Wildlife and the River Darenth Preservation Society all highlight risks that runoff, silt and pollutants worsened by flood risk would damage the stream. Slide 2. In November, SDC committed to protecting the River Darenth and its tributaries. An extract reads, the Council resolves to consider any impact as it arises on the River Darenth and all its tributaries, ensuring they continue to be free from pollution, feed and be fed by sustainable aquifers, sustain native biodiversity and be regenerated and restored. Approving this development breaks that commitment and sets a precedent risking harming other streams feeding the Darenth. There have been 8 appealed refusals on this site, citing flooding concerns. KCC SUDS states the site is at very low risk, although boreholes were abandoned after immediately filling with water. Slide 3. The EA map shows high flood risk along the stream, with the basin in a medium risk zone very near the stream. If the stream overtops, it will fill the basin, spreading flooding and pollution. Even without modelling, historical data shows 4 overflows in 44 years and near 10% annual risk, likely rising with climate change. One resident's home flooded 3 times in that period. Despite 6 requests for a visit, he received none. KCC SUDS did not do a site visit. They have no understanding of the stream's depth, profile, bed, stability or flood risk. A desktop survey relied totally on the application. Residents, DRIPS and other bodies wrote to KCC SUDS but were ignored and referred to the LPA, who are not flood specialists. How is that right? Further proof of this is the final input from KCC SUDS, which states, this response has been provided using the best knowledge and information submitted as part of the planning application at the time of responding and is reliant on the accuracy of that information. You cannot ignore or condition the stream from flooding. This is not effective decision-making and breaches SDC's agreement. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'd now like to call upon Mr. David Bedford, please, to come and speak for the application. You have 3 minutes, so whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the residents. We appreciate that there is nothing that we can say to gain your support, but please rest assured that the proposal has been designed as sensitively as possible. Particular concerns have been expressed in respect of drainage and flooding. Whilst I can't provide a technical response in the time available, redevelopment will ultimately better existing conditions by managing water flow rates. The proposal also offers an opportunity to introduce proper ecological management of the nearby Chalk stream. These are benefits, not reasons for refusal, and I'll be happy to take detailed questions and explain further if it's helpful. As members know, the government has set challenging housing targets, and whether we agree with them or not, the need cannot be met without the release of Greenbelt. In this context, the first thing that we're taught as planners is to look for land with strong and defensible boundaries that will not lead to further sprawl. Whilst understandably unpopular with those that live nearby, one does not need to be an expert to see that this is weakly performing Greenbelt. Indeed, the site was identified as such by the council's own consultants long before the concept of Greybelt was ever introduced. As part of the local plan review, you will have seen a range of Greenbelt sites put forward in your own areas, but I challenge you to find one that is so well contained. I'd also stress that whilst the emerging plan does not allocate specific sites in lower order settlements, it relies on sites like this as part of the formal windfall allowance. In respect to wider acceptability, the site is sustainable given the easy links to Kemsing railway station and the built-up area, and I would draw attention to the officer's commentary on the recent appeal decision in Lye. In summary, this is one of the many Greybelt applications that will come before you. and all will understandably attract a high level of objection. However, it's been progressed following positive pre-application engagement. It's been modified in line with the design requests, and it will deliver a valuable housing contribution on one of the lowest performing areas of Greenbelt. Whilst I share the sympathy with neighbours, this is a challenging period for the district, and the release of low contributing Greenbelt sites are essential. I therefore respectfully ask that you apply planning policy dispassionately and support the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to call the parish representative, Mr. Tony Monaghan, please. Sorry, Councillor Tony Monaghan, I do apologise. You too have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Good evening all. As you've heard, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Kemsing Parish Council. Many of the concerns we raised have been mitigated by conditions in Recommendation A to approve the development, but major obstacles remain, presenting barriers to approval. The Section 106 agreement defines KCC secondary education and SEND contributions, but not the local GP surgeries or Kemsing primary school places, which raised frequent objections. Community services should be provided for via infrastructure or a financial contribution, yet it's unaddressed. Condition 32 requires Thames Water to discuss and agree a plan for sewerage infrastructure improvements prior to occupation. The Noah's Ark Residents Association reports sewage spills flooding into gardens at the lower end of Greenlands Road, and yet Thames Water have failed to address the history of flooding and sewage overflows thus far. Water companies prioritise shareholders' interests over those of their customers. If Thames Water continue to state that existing provision is adequate, how can the condition prevent more frequent and more severe flooding when additional homes are connected? Despite paragraph 308 stating that there are good opportunities for sustainable modes of travel commensurate with the site's location, the dangerous walking or cycling route to Kemsing Station does not offer sustainable travel. The developer's own site plan shows how narrow the road is. The blind humpback bridge has stone parapets with no refuges for cycles or pedestrians and no footpath. And then there's 500 metres on Honeypot Lane, which is a narrow, unlit and undulating road with no footpath. Would you want your children to cycle this route, especially in darker winter months? Slide 2, please. There are only 11 spaces at Kemsing Station, 2 of which are for blue badge holders, leaving 9 regular spaces. These are frequently full, like last Thursday when I took these photographs. Access to the platforms is up a flight of stairs, with more stairs on the footbridge leading to the opposite platform. There's a help point, but the station is unmanned. Disabled people cannot use the station, and there are 2 maisonettes for wheelchair users. Slide 3, please.
You have 30 seconds, sir.
It's simply not sustainable. There are 3 main routes in and out of Kemsing. Frequent Pilgrim's Way closures force traffic onto the remaining routes which can't cope. Residents are late for school and work. Traffic speeds on Noah's Ark are already excessive, and highways agree. Paragraph 413 estimates 26 two-way trips in the morning and 22 p.m. from 27 homes, most having 2 cars. These matters alone give adequate reasons to refuse the
I'm
application.
sorry, that's the end of time. Thank you. I'd now like to call the local member, Councillor Haslam. You have 4 minutes whenever you're ready to start.
Good evening, Chairman, members, officers. I speak today as a local ward member and as someone who knows this location. Noah's Ark is not just a name, it reflects the reality, or the lived reality of this location, the stream floods. This is not theoretical modelling, it is observed repeated flooding, not only in winter, but critically in summer events where the system is already under stress and then over a wider area. As you see here, in 2016, the watercourse overtopped its banks and covered the road outside on to the east. And importantly, much of the flooding here is surface water driven, which is far less predictable and far harder to control through engineered solutions. We're fully minded of the need and provision for social housing. This is the first application we have brought into committee in this term. There have been 8 previous slide, please. There have been 8 previous applications refused in this field, primarily due to flooding risk. What has changed? Not the site, only the addition of the Laurels to provide access and detract planning history, not the topography, not the drainage characteristics, only the proposal. We are told the drainage can be addressed by condition, but conditions cannot fix a fundamentally unsuitable proposal. The proposed strategy relies on attenuation, storage and controlled discharge into a system that is already fails under pressure. We already have existing residents experiencing foul sewer surcharge during peak rainfall events. Adding further load, even if technically compliant on paper, is not responsible planning and is against policy as it increases the risk of flooding to the existing residents. The officer places significant weight on the absence of objection from the lead local flood authority, but members will know that this is not determinative. The Network Rail response was conditional and subject to a condition being included for the surface water drainage strategy to be produced and agreed prior to development. Any risk, they said, any risk in flood, will result in a formal objection from Network Rail. We're asking you to apply planning judgment where local evidence and lived experience contradict desktop modelled assumptions. Slide, please. The site lies within a cluster settlement which the Council's own settlement hierarchy identifies as unsuitable. This is not disputed, it is policy, and that is why the site is not included in the local plan. It is 1.2 kilometres from the nearest shop in West End and the railway station, but distance alone is not accessibility. The routes are not contiguous in terms of pavement provision and are unlit. In addition, the route to the railway station is even worse. It is an unmarked rural lane at national speed limits. It has no safe pedestrian refuge. This morning there were no bicycles and only 5 cars parked there. It was half empty. It is not well used for a reason. And critically, it is not suitable for all users, being unable to provide access for all. This site is not genuinely a sustainable location in any real world sense. The officer seeks to distinguish the recent refused appeal at Godden Green, but the core issues remain the same. Unsafe walking conditions, car dependency and rural isolation. I ask you to give that appeal decision more than limited weight. Finally, this is about planning balance. Yes, there is a need for housing, but the NPPF is clear. Development should not be placed in areas at unacceptable risk of flooding, nor should it create or exacerbate risk elsewhere. And it must be genuinely sustainable, not theoretically so. In this case, flood risk is real, evidenced and ongoing. Drainage solutions are uncertain and unproven in practice. Existing infrastructure is already failing, not because we oppose development, but because we must direct it to the right applications. And for these reasons, I ask you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And the next stage in our proceedings is for members to ask questions of the speakers. And I suspect, right, Councillor Ball, you were first.
Thank you. Just the applicant, please. You spoke about the benefits of the treatment you were going to provide for there. Can you give us some details of those, please?
So specifically in the context of the drainage. So yes, effectively at the moment we have a uncontrolled site. So there's uncontrolled runoff, which is having some of these knock-on impacts that the members and the residents are talking about. Whenever you're dealing with a greenfield site, as part of that drainage strategy, you are reverting it back to better than greenfield conditions. So that water runoff will have a number of SUDS features that will effectively take that water away, store it and control the discharge so that you have a betterment in terms of you won't have that overloading of the water course. Again, I'm sure the officers can give you the detailed technical explanations as well as part of the drainage strategy, but it's effective a SUDS system that will be better conditions than what is currently the place now.
May I ask a subsequent question as well? Does
course you may.
does this mean this will, in the event of a possible flooding, is this going to make it, you're saying, better or will help alleviate this?
Yes, so it's going to make things better. We won't necessarily be able to remedy all existing issues, but this proposal will put in measures that allow for the 1 in 100 year storm plus percentage for climate change risk. So it will control the water and provide betterment on what currently exists.
Councillor Thornton, you were next.
Thank you. I did have two questions, but one's just been asked. Also to the applicant, please, Mr. Bedford, you mentioned the Lye decision. Could you explain why you think that's relevant here? Because obviously it's a much bigger community. The site in question was much nearer to shops, locations, stations. Why are you drawing comparisons between those two?
Yeah, I think it's worth looking at the specific commentary in the officer's report, particularly because they talk about the sustainability scores and the comparisons there. So that was deemed to be a sustainable location. So it's more in the context of the grey belt test is why I've raised it. And in that respect, it's a very clear comparison that this would be sustainable for the purposes of grey belt policy. But the officer, I think, sets out, if you bear with us, I can give you the paragraph reference, but it's just quite nicely set out in terms of the overall sustainability scores for the two settlements.
Councillor Horwood, then Councillor Camp.
Yeah, thank you. This is to the applicant as well. Just in the terms of the comments, one of the other speakers mentioned about Thames Water. I know Thames Water have given a request for a condition that basically says, you know, that they need a lot more information. But considering the length of the time this application has been under consideration, they said that they failed to receive the information from you to actually determine what the foul sewage water runoff is. What's the reason for that?
There's not been any information that's withheld. A drainage strategy and the various utility studies have been submitted with the application. It's the detailed drainage design that always follows post planning. So I think all of the information that is needed to make a judgment on the principle of development has been provided, which is why it's led to the no objections. That say the next stage is the detailed technical design if permission is granted.
Councillor Camp, you were next.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Connolly, please. Excuse me. Obviously, you live nearby. I want to understand, please, a little bit more about your flooding. Is it all the time, some of the time that it's affected, and it just affects part of it? I mean, the slides we saw clearly were quite a lot. Is there any? You know, is there any time when it's worse? Is it all the time or some of the time and then occasionally it gets worse?
Thank you very much for the question. Well, you would assume, wouldn't you, that it would be at its worst in the winter when it rains very heavily. It's fair to say that the stream is very fast flowing and it's very high in the winter, but the real problem actually is the summer. And the reason for that is the stream runs up from the hills. And in the summer, when it gets very, very dry, the clay soil is baked. And when it rains very, very heavily, of course, the water comes into the stream and it's coming down from the hills and there's an absolute deluge. And that torrential rain is just, that torrent of water is just enormous and it just breaks its banks and spreads massively. So our concern and contention is that's going to flood the drainage basin, which is right next to it. And also, any runoff from that site is going to be picked up in that water and go straight back into that stream with all of those pollutants. So all the issues about saying they're making it better, how can you do that? You cannot condition that the stream doesn't flood. And that's going to breach the Sevenoaks District Council agreement. Thank you very much for the question. Happy to answer any others.
You turn off your microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Hold on, I've got Councillor Darrington, Councillor Shea, Councillor Purvis.
Mr. Connolly, please. Has the flooding had an adverse effect on your insurance premiums?
Well, I myself, my garden has flooded very badly on 2 occasions in 25 years. I'm incredibly lucky. In July 2016, it was half an inch away from my thresholds. I was extremely lucky, about 4 inches of water on my patio. However, my neighbour 2 doors down, because the water obviously goes to the lowest point, wasn't so lucky. And his house has flooded very badly on 3 occasions. He has had to have some remedial works done on his fence line. There's a 40-foot bit of concrete in order to get house insurance. So yes, he had real problems getting house insurance. I have been extremely lucky. However, my property has the attenuation basin right at the end of it. So I'm obviously quite concerned that that attenuation basin is going to fill and I'm going to get more flooding coming my way. And I hear what the guy says about mitigating it, but I don't understand how that's going to work. The stream that floods is not in the control of the developer, it's privately owned. It's right next to it, but it's not owned by the developer or controlled by them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Shea, you were next.
Thank you. Can I understand from Mr. Bedford, please, what provisions you've made in the design to ensure that pollutants making their way into those attenuation ponds or other attenuation schemes don't end up into the chalk stream?
Yes, I mean, having said I'll give you a technical explanation, that's beyond my level of expertise, but effectively as the water is managed through the site, there will be measures, there are various different types of filters and measures that can be put in place to filter out the various different spoil and such like. So I'm afraid I'm not a drainage engineer, so I can't give you a technical explanation, but the purpose is instead of just having unregulated water running off into the stream, you are controlling it and putting it through whatever storage and flow management and filtration measures are required before it is then controlled back into the water course in the new connection, which is to the west of the site. So I'm sorry, I can't give you details of how that's actually done, but the measures exist to filter everything to make sure that you're discharging safely and non-pollutants back into that water course.
You wish to come back?
If I may,
Could you
please,
be?
Chair.
Yeah.
So then, listening to the concerns from residents about those attenuation spaces overflowing potentially, how have you modelled it to make sure that everything coming into that area would end up going through those filters you described?
Yeah, again, so the drainage strategy has modelled the existing site, the existing context, so what happens at the moment, and then designed a drainage strategy around how you treat that based on an uplift for climate change and increased flood risk. And that will all form, or that all forms part of the drainage strategy. The next stage and purpose of the condition is the detailed drainage design that will set out exactly where all of those measures are and how they're going to work. So the strategy is the first stage, and that's what the lead local flood risk authority needs to be able to give the okay. And then the detailed detailed drainage design comes at the next stage. And that's why, as the officers said in the report, they do that as a pre-commencement condition. So no works can start until that detailed strategy is before you and has been agreed. But I'm not trying to be evasive, but you don't go through that detailed drainage design in terms of and the construction design until it's post planning.
Thank you. Councillor Purvis, then Councillor Horwood.
Thank you. This is the developer again. The access from Greenlands Road is not great, I think you'd agree. Is there any possibility of a secondary access from the proposed development in Noah's Ark, the 7 houses? Is that a possibility?
No, as far as I'm aware, there isn't an opportunity to provide a second vehicular access. We have a secondary pedestrian link, which again is mentioned in the officer's report, which is the right of way, which provides improved access to the station, and that will be applicable for both existing residents and anybody who lives on Greenlands Road. Generally, under the Kent design guide, anything under 50 units would normally be a single point of access. So there's a single point of vehicle access, but various pedestrian routes.
Councillor Horwood.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question either to Councillor Haslam or the Parish Council representative. It was just really just to check my facts on the sort of, when considering the sustainability of the location. Am I right in thinking that you only have one bus that serves Noah's Ark, the number 6 bus route, and in that there is no Sunday service? On a Saturday service, it only comes twice for the whole day. And then on Monday to Friday, it's again a very limited service.
Councillor Hassel, would you like to answer that?
I'm happy to answer that. It does sound like you, Councillor Ward, you've read the timetable. And I think that the timetable is defines what the bus service is. There are no additional buses other than the S6, and which is irregular. And when we have roadworks which close the road because the roads aren't all suitable for buses, there is no or limited bus service because there once the main route comes in, there are no real diversions.
Thank you. Councillor Solander.
Thank you. Are we questions of the officer still? Just double checking.
We're questions of the speakers at the moment, not the officer.
Thanks. Bye.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councillor Camp.
Thank you. Just a quick question, if I could, to Councillor Haslam. You mentioned a couple of things, sewage overflow, and you were talking really quickly, so I might have missed what you said, but you mentioned about sewage overflow and the land levels for connecting manholes or something. Could you just elaborate a little bit more for me, please?
Yes, for those of you who were at the site visit this morning, at the bottom of Greenlands Road, I mean, talking particularly about the surface water, currently the latest revision for the discharge doesn't indicate the depths of the pipe. And the problem is the undulation of the site and the topology of the site. The Greenlands Road runs uphill towards the culvert by about 0.5 metre. And there's only there's not a limited amount of depth which goes into that. So that in itself is an issue. And when you look at the field, the topology of that, half of it is lower down and half of it, there's a ridge in the middle. Not so much in the Laurels in itself, because that's relatively flat. With regards to the sewer discharge, there was a rather large, it was a major project back in 2006, upgrading the pipeline across the, I don't know what the valley is called, but it goes from Noah's Ark all the way across to the Otford Road. And it stopped west of Adelaide, which is at the bottom of Greenlands Road. And there are two major pipes, two pipes which funnel into one pipe into the Garden of Adelaide, which is west of the site itself in Greenlands Road. And that does discharge at high peak level until Thames Water bolted the manhole cover down. All that effectively will do is back up the problem to the next manhole, and they will just keep carrying on and blocking the next one up until you get to a point where there are none others to block, and then it comes out of people's toilets. Now, at the bottom of Noah's Ark, number 1 Noah's Ark, the resident has told me that at current peak levels, the manhole at their back door discharges. And I believe that there are other locations within the area that do the same, but I can't give names to it. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. It's better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice. Oh, Councillor Shay.
Can I just follow on from that, because that sounds like the description of a problem that is very familiar from some work that we do in our ward. So in terms of the sewer capacity, can I just ask Mr. Bedford what work has been done, please, on sewer capacity? What we see in our ward for everybody else's information is that we see storm drains, sewers overflowing when there's huge amounts of extra water getting into them, coming off surface waters surfaces from roofs. Gardens that have got more hard standing than they did originally, that sort of thing. But I'd like to understand what modelling has been done to ensure, and what work's been done with the Foul Water Disposal Authority locally, please.
Yeah, so as I say, the full suite of investigations has taken place as far as possible. I'm not a drainage engineer, so I can't go through the fine detail, but yes, everything has been underpinned by proper investigations and liaison with the relevant providers that have effectively said there's capacity in the system. In terms of the exacerbating the problem through additional surface water runoff, again, that comes back to the fact that we will be taking water out of the watercourse and such like. So we will be managing the flows in that respect. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, all of the relevant checks that are needed pre-planning have been taken out, and they're all included in the detailed drainage strategy. I'm sorry that I haven't got the full copy of that in front of me to be able to take you to the relevant references, but I have to come back to the fact that, yeah, we have that statutory consultees that have provided comments which are summarised by the case officer.
Councillor Horwood, you had your hand up.
Sorry, yeah, just final question, just to Mr. Bedford. You mentioned to one of my colleagues that you have pedestrian access through the east part of the site. Can you just confirm that all the landowners are fully accepting of that pedestrian access and there's no outstanding, for example, civil issues?
I can confirm that there's a fully documented right of way across that access, and that was something that was discussed with the case officer for that, so the corresponding application next door when that application was going through. So there was liaison with both parties. So that is fully documented, and that's a legal right of way.
Thank you. If there are no more, Councillor Thornton.
Thank you. You kind of touched on this just now, and I appreciate you're not a water specialist, Mr. Bedford, but well, we're all sitting here this evening, and we also sat in this chamber when we made commitments to the chalk stream back in November. So if we're making a decision tonight which is going to impact on there, we've got to be absolutely confident that if the conditions are in place, that we can hand on heart say that we've done something, certainly I'd like to say good here, and certainly not damaging here. Am I right in saying that with the work that you're proposing to do, that the images we saw from the flooding in Noah's Ark, I travel that way regularly, I know exactly how wet it gets, and a lot of remedial work was done after that by KCC, I know. But presumably the water that came off at that stage was polluted and eventually would have found itself into its watercourse. So are you saying that in the future, with the work you're doing, potentially that water's finding itself onto your side, it'll get into your systems and potentially will be cleaner? Is there actually a benefit here? I'm just trying to get my head around and feeling comfortable that if we are being asked to, if we're being told that a condition will deal with this, which is what we typically get, that we can be confident in what we're saying here.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a very good question. And that's the point I was trying to make at the start or during my presentation is at the moment, everything is uncontrolled. So pollutants, or whether or not it's surface water, pollutants into that water course, that is happening on an unregulated basis. A lot of the problems are obviously people have built close and put platforms over the stream and what have you, and that all has an impact in terms of water going through and having impact on the quality of that chalk stream. We can't, nor are we required to be able to put right everything that is currently happening, but what we can say with absolute certainty is that we won't compound or make the problem worse, and we would hope that we would make it better, because any water or anything that's diverted into our site will then be treated and then discharged safely and cleanly back into the watercourse, and that's why it's a distinct betterment. The same principle for particularly in the chalk stream, for there's currently no management of that whatsoever. So say it is subject to rubbish and bits and pieces. So actually we can't control both sides of the stream, but being able to control the part that is within our ownership on the southern side means that you can have proper ecological management and protection of that, and those measures can be part of a management plan and such like. So there are distinct betterments that can be secured as part of agreeing the appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me if I've misunderstood my questions to the applicant. I've read a lot of information regarding KCC's views on the highways and on the parking and on the traffic flow. That's absolutely fine. You talk about betterment of the area, but is there any proposals with the increased number of residents there and the close proximity to the station to actually improve the walking safety from the station to the residents' properties?
The short answer is there's no off-site works that are proposed as part of the planning application. So sometimes with applications you might have crossings and what have you. There are no off-site works here. What the proposal is still liable. So there will be still on all of the units that will go into the infrastructure plot. Whether or not there's anything that is in the delivery schedule that looks to improve local highways conditions, I couldn't say, but there will be contribution via SIL, but there's nothing specific or no specific off-site works proposed as part of this application.
I have one question, if I may, of Chris Connolly, please. We've heard it said this evening that there are no management processes for the stream. Do you know whether that is, in your view, the same the case, or are you aware of any management strategies that there might be in place?
Thank you. Well, what I would say is I've heard that it's unregulated and there's a load of pollution going into the stream currently. These are people's gardens. There's not a huge amount of pollution going into them. There may be a little bit, further along, perhaps from some of the farms, but if this legislation goes through, then it will be illegal for them to do that. Quite frankly, I've heard a lot about it's going to improve it. I really don't see how that can be the case. I mean, for a start, there's no mention of the chalk stream in the application. The officer's report hardly mentions it. There's certainly no mention of it breaking its banks. There's nothing at all there. So this guy's talking about the application. He's not talking about the real lived experience that we have. You've seen the pictures of the flooding, how bad it gets. I don't see how he can mitigate that and improve it when he can't control it. It's not on his land. He doesn't own the land. I don't really understand what he's saying. It just seems to me that it's not true. I'm not a drainage specialist, but I live there. I know what it's like. I've lived the experience. And no matter what this guy says about mitigating it, I can't understand how he can when he doesn't control the chalk stream. How's that going to improve it? Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions of the speakers, I now open the floor to questions of the officer. Councillor Thornton.
Thank you. I was very glad that the Kemsing Parish Councillor picked up on this point because it was something I noticed and it's something I mentioned to the officer earlier. And that's regarding the 106 arrangement here and what contributions are being made. In fact, the Kemsing Councillor, Mr.
Connolly.
No, Mr.
Monaghan. Sorry.
Also referred to primary education, which wasn't specifically mentioned in the report. I noticed that on in paragraph 34 in Kemsing's response, they do actually make specific reference to the fact that there is already issues with the GP surgery within Kemsing. They don't specifically refer to the primary provision, but that was mentioned in the speech this evening. I'm surprised that there isn't provision being asked for either of those. We are very keen to make sure we get infrastructure in place. It's all been a lot of chat today about the water and the infrastructure as far as that's concerned. Kent seemed to be asking an awful lot of money for secondary. What about primary? What about healthcare provision? There's actually no mention of that in there whatsoever. Why and shouldn't there be?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we have to follow KCC economic development in terms of their requests and where they say the demand is. In this case, they have highlighted a need for secondary education contributions, as you've rightly detailed, and that would be secured within the Section 106 agreement. If they've not specifically requested primary education, and that would usually be because they feel there isn't the demand for it, or the existing the existing capacity is able to support the existing development and then the proposed development as well. As for healthcare provision, it's usually something that would be covered by SIL contributions as well, and this would generate quite a hefty SIL contribution as part of the package. And if healthcare provision is something that is bidded for and deemed necessary, then it could be provided to the area.
Thank you. Councillor Horwood.
Thank you. It was in regards to the appeal that we've heard about in Lye. I was just reading through the inspector's appeal, and particularly on the issue around sustainability. The inspector actually says that, you know, sort of actually the reasons for the council's objection to it was actually based more on character rather than on the principle of sustainability. So I'm just trying to understand the connection between mentioning that appeal and obviously this application.
I think reference has been made to it in the sense of one of the things that when we look at sustainability, it's not just about trains, buses, walking, cycling. It's about the facilities that are in the proximity of the site. So there are a number of things we look at. And the reference to Lye was the fact that one of the things that the inspector noted or was reported that we identified for the new, as a government sort of connectivity tool, which flags up that rates sites in terms of what facilities are nearby, walking distances, cycling, where the schools are, doctors, shops, and that rated the site at 34 out of 100, and that's the way the ranking's done. This site is down as 39, so, and that was a scheme where an inspector found at Lye that they considered it was a sustainable location. I think what we was just trying to flag is that this site scores higher than the Lye one. So we were just trying to draw out that sustainability is not just about the bus, it's about looking at the wider area. It was just trying to provide a comparison in terms of a site not too far away. Lye isn't identified as one of our areas for growth and development. So in terms of similarities, that's where we was drawing it reference to, albeit they are two very different settlements. Accept that.
Can I just follow up on that? So the connectivity tool, because I'm not familiar with it at all, like, does that also take into account, for example, pavements to train stations? Like, sort of, it has that real granular level of detail that it can assess an area based on, you know, sort of that.
Yeah, they look at footpaths, whether those are lit as well. So it literally buries down to a whole great lot of detail. It's a relatively new tool that has been out in the past sort of year to 18 months, and it will be a tool that we probably hear more about when we come to look at these sites, because part of the green belt assessment or grey belt assessment is that sustainability, and inspectors are making reference to this document. We've been making reference to it as well. So something that you're going to hear more about over the period of time. So I think we just wanted to flag that there was a site there. Whilst it's not in the papers, I thought just make reference to, members recall probably the last couple of committees back at Gorse Hill at Farningham, where we had a PIP application that scored 38 to 40. So very similar to that one. The inspector found that one to be sustainable. So location that was allowed as well. It's that tool isn't itself the be all and everything. That is just one part of the jigsaw we make. And it was just that we were just trying to draw that out so members are aware of that when they come to sort of make a decision on the application.
Thank you. Councillor Thornton, you were next.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up on sustainability. So are you telling me that in development management, we're using the sustainability tool as a way of defining sustainability, whereas in planning policy and local plan, we're actually looking at settlement hierarchy as far as sustainability is concerned, because the two aren't compatible. And you're giving me schools, and I've seen where the site is in Lye. I know where the station is in Lye. I know where the shops are in Lye. And I know this site very well. I know where the station is in Kemsing, and I know where the shops are in Kemsing, and they're both in opposite directions. And they're at least 3 times the distance from what we're talking about in Lye. So you're getting scores which don't make sense to me, knowing those two communities. So I'm struggling with this as being a reason for using that for a sustainability score, rather than what we've said, our approach to local plan, which is using settlement hierarchy, and Noah's Ark is not Kemsing, it is its own settlement in its own right. So I need to understand this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very fair point. I mean, the connectivity, as I said, is something which it's not the be all and everything, it's part of that judgment. And with this particular site and the sustainability argument, our planning policy team identify where they want new development to go forward. Those are the most sustainable locations. But it doesn't mean that sites outside of that can't also be sustainable if they're, when we carry out a judgment. I think what we were just trying to draw out was that we've had a number of experiences of appeals where planners and inspectors have taken a slightly more where sites, because the one at Lyle we said was unsustainable, and the inspector found that to be sustainable, and then other sites. I think it was just trying to draw members' attention to that fact. It's not, obviously we have the cluster, and it's not been identified. There is another site being promoted, but it's a previously developed site, but it is within the Noah's Ark area as well. So that is being promoted as part of the local plan. So it is a bit of a combination, but it was just sort of, they're some of the things we look at, and in terms of whether it's buses, trains, schools, and proximity. So it's just trying to give you an idea.
Thank you. Councillor Solander, you wanted to ask a question of the officer and came in at slightly the wrong moment. Would you like to do it now?
Thank you very much. A lot of this seems to be based on future conditioning. And so it's going to be very complex conditioning due with water, sewage, discharge, overflow, etc., etc. I think it's SDC, it's us who are responsible for approving that when they come back with the detailed planning. Is that correct?
It is, however, it is, we consult the lead local flood authority and probably the Environment Agency as well, and we would be guided by their technical advice when they look at the detailed plans.
That was going to be my question. Is it, if it is that complex, do we have amongst these different governing bodies the ability to challenge the plan that's been put forward, or do we just have to accept it at face value?
We, from experience, we have the ability to challenge it. I've seen my fair share of sustainable drainage strategy conditions, and they usually are not as straightforward. There's a lot of back and forth until they get it right. And the lead local flood authority do look into it in very extensive detail, and we follow their assessment and their guidance.
Yeah, just to follow up on that point, I mean, we've had a number of sites where we've actually refused those details, and they've had to then go away and come back, but we have refused them where they're not acceptable. And obviously with those schemes, unless there's details of discharge, they can't start.
Councillor Malone, you put your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, follow-on question from my colleague's question about the conditions, and also Aaron's last comment. So we're sometimes frustrated about the responses that we get from different bodies that have to input to this process. Do you consistently see the level of focus that you would want to from those parties who are being asked to sign off on the conditions? Question number one. And then question number two, and I think Aaron's kind of alluded to this. Do you ever see any instances where approved applications subsequently fail because the conditions can't be satisfied?
Starting with the second question first, so we have seen our fair share of what applications that have been held up at condition stage and have eventually, they sometimes even run out of time and not commenced, and they may have had to come back in for a fresh application. And in terms of the first question, we are comfortable that we get sufficient engagement from the consultees in these sorts of conditions.
Yeah, and just on that first point, it's normally where we are struggling to find those details acceptable. It's normally the formal consultees with their expertise that are raising issues of whether that's what the systems they're putting forward, whether they would actually deliver what we're requiring them to do. I mean, it's not unusual, particularly with surface water drainage, for the first set of details not to be acceptable. It may be a case of coming back with amendments and changes to make sure it really does do what it's supposed to.
Thank you. Are there any more questions of the officers? There aren't, in which case, taking account of the late observations, which are on your tables in front of you, I move the recommendation as per the order papers and open the matter for debate. Councillor Thornton.
Thank you. I think I want to go early on this one because I'm still formulating my thoughts on this, and I certainly haven't come to conclusion yet. I know this site well. I used to feed some, walk some dogs in Noah's Ark, and their garden backed onto this site. So I know it very well. And I know that it's a very prized open area for the residents of Noah's Ark. If you didn't know the area and you saw it on a map, you didn't have any view on it in particular, it's actually quite a nice self-contained site. It's got the railway line at the bottom. It's got residential houses either side. You kind of look at that. If you're looking for somewhere to put housing, as you know, we're all under pressure to put housing in. It tilted balances against us. Actually, it's not a bad plot. I know that it's had attempts in the past to have permissions granted on here which have failed, but of course the current government have substantially changed the goalposts with Grey Belt and the local plan process that we are having to go through. I have serious concerns of the fact that we've approached this particular parcel of land in two separate ways, one through planning policy where it was rejected, I believe, and not taken forward as part of the local plan process, whereas now it's coming through development management side of our business and it seems to be acceptable. So there's a contradiction there in my mind. I had obviously huge concerns about the flooding, and you know, we've got a very thorough report in front of us, and I thank it was actually Hayley's work, I know, on the whole, but actually you've done it proud this evening as well. It's a very comprehensive piece of work, and I know that there's been an awful lot of concerns raised by local residents and people involved in here, and a lot of questions have needed to be answered. And the standard response on the whole has been, we can deal with that by condition, and it's not the answer we want to give to our residents when this kind of thing, because we would like to see a full solution now, but very often we can't because of the work that's involved in order to get there. So from a planning point of view sat here, if we're being told by our planning experts that this can be dealt with by condition, then that is something that we have to believe will happen, and that it is robust and thorough enough that it will happen. And I'm reassured by the comments that we got from the applicant as far as, in fact, the possibility of betterment, although the local residents clearly are not that convinced that is going to be the case. So there's a potential actual benefit here, but we all know that there is an issue at the moment. Clearly, at the moment, what's being discharged into Chalk Stream naturally is probably not good. So, and it's only down to the developer to make sure that what he's putting in isn't going to make it any worse. That's all that he's obliged to do. As far as an unsustainable location is concerned, well, yeah, so we base settlement hierarchies, as I say. I mean, this is what it comes down to, trying to get to the station. I wouldn't like to walk that. I mean, I know how I drive around there, and I'm quite careful around those lanes. And you know, very often you come around a corner and you're surprised that something's coming full at you. It is a long walk. And of course, Kemsing's a funny village in itself, in the fact that some of the shops down in West End, actually the vast majority of the stuff what people want, with the Chinese takeaway and the fish and chip shops, are probably 2.5 miles away almost from the site. But it's considered to be Kemsing. So Noah's Ark has its own development here. So this whole issue of sustainability in here is questionable. The flood issues we've heard a lot about. I think, you know, we've got the flood map. So we're talking about 1 in 100 years. That's pretty average from other things that have come in front of us here as far as mitigation is concerned. I do have serious concerns. There's no contribution towards local healthcare facilities. You know, our residents are constantly telling us, you know, what about the infrastructure and healthcare, and access to GPs is very, very important. I hear what you're saying about SIL. And we have actually given SIL money to the Kemsing surgery in the past. I don't know if they ever built it out. They did. They've done the extension, fine. But we're still hearing that that's still an issue. And I'm surprised there's no primary. So as someone who represents a ward next door to this in Seal and Weald, and in fact, our wheeled bus service is pretty similar to what you get in Noah's Ark, by the way, which is pretty terrible, and nothing on Sundays as well. But when we had that closure of the Pilgrim's Way not that long ago, there was utter chaos on Charles Bridge Lane. There was utter chaos going on to join the A25 in the heart of Seal. And I think 26 or whatever it was movements in a morning is just unrealistic on a location which is clearly going to be dependent on private car, because you're not going to be able to walk anywhere, not going to be able to cycle anywhere. We have to go with what the statistics are saying. Highways are saying it's not an issue, but we had a severe problem. So if just one chink goes, in fact, they were threatening to close Watery Lane, what was it, for 21 days the other day, which is the major access to the Chaucer Development Park, the business park, which would have involved, they actually put Fuller's Hill in as being a sensible route for HGVs. I mean, you know, they did not have a clue. And we fought back very, very strongly on that one and got input from KCC. The road network around there is tricky. And if just one chink of the armour falls, it does cause severe problems, which I think is KCC's level of when they actually start getting interested in things. So I have serious concerns about traffic, and certainly people are going to be traffic bound, car bound. So I'm really interested to hear what people are saying, but those are the kind of issues that I'm battling with here at the moment. But what I do see on a map is actually a triangle of land, which is kind of saying, look, we've got residential one side, and actually the densities of a good value of. No one's talked about density. No one's talked about design. This is a full application here. We haven't even talked about the design. Good to see that it's gone through the urban design. It's a big ask. I think as planners, you've done a good job, and I would struggle to find reasons. I mean, or probably it's gut feel stuff, which I'm coming at here. It's a real heart over head thing, because what I'm seeing in here isn't actually what I think I know is true from what my own experience is. So I'm keeping an open mind for now.
Councillor Horwood.
Yeah, just sort of following up on that. I think I concur with Councillor Thornton around, especially around the confusion here about whether this is a sustainable location or not. And obviously, I asked the question to our officers around, you know, sort of like the connectivity tool. I've just had a play around with the connectivity tool. It looks very generic in some of the assertions that it's making. But what I did do was compare that with our own data around the settlement hierarchy document, the document we only recently went out to test with the public a couple of months ago. And interestingly, in there, Lye is highlighted as having a connectivity rated, as overall in the settlement hierarchy of having a score of 33, which sort of fits it in line with what obviously that appeal decision concluded. The problem that I have is the overall settlement score for Noah's Ark is 2. And you compare that to other settlements for Sevenoaks, which has a score of 784, Kemsing, which has a score of 47. And you start to see the disparity between obviously what our own planning officers have assessed in quite some detail. We were all consulted as local members about settlement hierarchy and looking for, you know, all the services that belong to local communities. And that really bothers me. Councillor Thornton highlighted, you know, in Lye, there is a pavement connection from where was the proposed site, you know, to the railway station. You can walk safely to that train station if you want to get a train as a sustainable location. The Lye area as well, the roads are fairly compatible with other forms of sustainable transport, maybe not in the wider area as you try to leave Lye, but at least if you're going around the village, you know, it is a little bit safer than, for example, some of the roads around Noah's Ark, and especially south there, especially if you're trying to connect to Sevenoaks. So I am struggling with this as a sustainable location, which is obviously required when we're looking at Greenbelt and determining whether it is sustainable, and in conjunction with, you know, if it is grey belt, and obviously we've highlighted it as grey belt. I have no quarrels with the conclusion that this is grey belt, as we've already said. You know, we may not agree with it politically, but you know, that is the national planning law that has deemed large swathes of our district, unfortunately, in this, you know, in this grey area of grey belt. I asked the question about the bus route because for me that is another indication of whether something is sustainable, and I agree it's not the only indication, but as I said, there's no Sunday service. The Saturday service has 2 buses out of Noah's Ark for the whole of the day. The Monday to Friday service is interesting. If you had a child at St Edith's School, the school, I believe, closes, the classes finish at 3 p.m. The bus before that goes past at 2:47 p.m. and then the next bus to get back to Noah's Ark, if you needed a bus service, is 5:05 p.m. That is an extraordinary timetable to claim people can just hang around for a bus if they need to get back to Noah's Ark because they've got a disability or a child that, you know, maybe, you know, doesn't want to walk forever. I also looked at the transport times from the settlement site to the main area of Kemsing, especially to the Londis shop. Now, obviously, in the report, it talks about it's around sort of, I think it was 1 kilometre. Or I can't remember the exact detail. You make the reference to the distance to the high street in Kemsing, which obviously, if you want to go to the pub, that's exactly where where it leads to. If you need to get to Londis to the shops, or you need to get to the school, the distances are a little bit further than that. So I put in in Google Maps how long it would take, for example, from the entrance to the site to some of those locations. And again, it's coming up with more than 15 minutes to get to either the shops or the primary school. To the station, it says it will take 21 minutes. And of course, that's along a road with no pavement, no lights. I think sort of all of that, equally, I am concerned about this location. I think in another location that, closer to Kemsing, there would be undeniable no argument that it's in a safer location, but this is in a very rural location, added to the fact that it's right on the boundary of the national landscape. And the report does talk about how, although it's not in the national landscape, development here does have an impact on the national landscape. And picking up Councillor Thornton's point about density, we're told obviously the density of the site is 20 dwellings per hectare. I don't disagree with that. But of course, that's because a huge swathe of the site is the entrance road to the development, and also the landscaping, the lovely detached property at the entrance to the site, and its very large guarding is all included within those calculations. If you actually look to the actual site, and if you were to just look at the east part of the site, which is where the majority, well, if not all, apart from the single detached dwelling is, that does increase the density. And when you're increasing to density in proximity to the national landscape, you should be stepping down the density as you approach the national landscape to respect that natural stop of the sprawl, not sort of intensely putting it there. Just as I know other councillors will want to speak, the only other thing that bothers me, and it's not a reason for objection, but in the report as well, it does talk about the mitigation measures for noise, specifically on the properties that abut the railway. And it says, as part of those mitigation measures, they will require windows, including habitable rooms, to be fixed shut. So people will not be able to open their windows to make sure that the noise levels internally are acceptable. Now, I think that is poor design, meaning that people can't open windows, especially in the summer when you need to have windows, you need to have sort of fresh air coming in. And I know the report talks about trickle vents, allowing some airflow, but I would hate to see us in this district start moving to this point where people cannot open windows on the basis of noise mitigation, not on the, we have fixed windows shut because of issues about overlooking and privacy concerns when new development is built, but on the specific point that this site is unacceptable because it will breach internal noise. And so therefore the only conclusion is, sort of shut their windows and fix them, and they can't even open that. I just think that's a terrible route to go down. In London, it is more acceptable. Yes, they have to build next to railway stations, but on this site in particular, it does seem really inappropriate. But anyway, I'll let other councillors speak, and obviously I remain eager to listen to their views.
Thank you, Councillor Horde. Councillor Malone and then Councillor Purvis.
Thank you, Chair. I won't talk for long about sustainability, sustainability locations, not least because I think Councillor Horde's comments cover that really well. I guess I was thinking about that point in general, and I guess making the observation that it feels very subjective, but I think Councillor Horde's observations bring in a good deal of objectivity, based not least on the council's own work, which I think is very helpful. The other area I wanted to highlight that was concerning me is the reliance on conditions, and Ashley and Aaron, assured us that we can rely on conditions with confidence in general, and they go through that process quite frequently, and I took that on board. But as I read the report, there were a number of sort of clauses and phrases that sort of jumped out at me. So have a look at paragraph 443. It's talking about concerns in relation to the river, and it says that these are likely to be addressable by the conditions, likely to. And then in 472, it talks about an aspiration for no pollution risk. I'm just unclear in my own mind how we prove a negative in the relation to how things are going to turn out in the future based on these conditions. And then looking at 474, the words likely, should, and can leapt out at me and didn't give me utter assurance that these conditions would would absolutely solve any problems that might arise. So I understand the tilted balance, and I really like the fact that we've got a high proportion of affordable housing in this case. But I have got a couple of fundamental concerns about it. I will listen to other people, but I am struggling a little bit at the moment.
Aaron would like to just brief us on some conditions.
I hear your point and hear your concerns in terms of that. One of the things that we have to balance is that we shouldn't refuse that. We're told in the NPPF that we shouldn't refuse applications if the harm can be covered by condition. So that's where a number of issues will be covered by condition, rather than saying that that's a ground refusal or we haven't got sufficient information. It's a case of that that information will come in, we will assess it and decide whether that is acceptable or not. If that detail isn't acceptable, the development doesn't go ahead. It's as simple as that, really. So, yeah,
thank you.
I've just got the paragraph number here as well. It's paragraph 56 of the NPPF. It specifically mentions that local planning authorities should consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of conditions or planning obligations.
Thank you. Councillor Purvis, you were next. Councillor Solander to follow.
Thank you. I'm looking at paragraph 407, which says, policy EN1 states that all new development should provide satisfactory means of access for vehicles. Now, if we look at this, Greenlands Road is a fairly narrow road. It's the end of a cul-de-sac, enters between two houses, New Haven and Fairlawns. There's not much space between them. So I think the access is inadequate and unsatisfactory for the extra 27 houses, sorry. Well, I know Casey haven't objected, but then, to be honest, they never seem to object anyway. So I'm unhappy with the access.
Thank you. Councillor Solander, you were next.
Thank you. My thinking on this just now is that some of the last recent comments have almost made this sound like a hellish place to live. and it's not. There are houses there of people who enjoy living there, and I very much understand not wanting something to be built in their field. I'm the ward representative for Lye, and so can talk about that if there's any more questions on it. But there are houses, there is access to a train station, there is a 1 mile walk into Kemsing, which is a vibrant community. There are cycle routes, there are bus routes. These are all also potentially positives, not negatives. And what we learned from the Farningham, where it was a slightly different scenario, and we went with the judgment of heart over head and local knowledge about the issues of the road and access and the dangers from that, and we lost that appeal, and we had costs given against us at appeal, unless there is a good reason. KCC did not object here. KCC objected in Lye. That's the significant difference, regardless of the sustainability angle. And so I don't see any argument here that would give us reason to reject. This could be better for the river. So yes, it could be worse in theory, but it could also be better. And in my interpretation, this is almost a planning in principle, because the conditioning is so strict that's been put upon it that we're saying, yes, you can build, but you can only build if you can really go to the nth degree to prove that this will be a betterment. So my current leaning is toward agreeing with the officers.
Thank you. Councillor Shay.
Thank you. It's been really interesting to hear the points that people raise, and it is a difficult one, this one. I think just one point I wanted to add into the mix that we haven't talked about so far is about that this would deliver 27 homes in a rural community, and something we've seen through the local planning process is a great emphasis on homes in urban areas and less in the rural. And if homes aren't built in rural areas, they will die. If people can't live in the areas that they've grown up in, they'll move somewhere else, and villages will suffer. So I think that's something that's also worth bearing in mind when we look at this, particularly when it's got the affordable homes in it too. I think that is welcome. I'm still trying to get my head around the issues around the water, but I'm encouraged by the conditions that are here, and the experience we have of working through those conditions. In condition 27, I would like to just understand if we've got this as tight as it could be. It talks about, sorry, font's very, very small on my screen. That the property shouldn't be occupied until a verification report pertaining to the surface water drainage system and prepared by a suitably competent person has been submitted. Is that a defined term of who it is that's going to produce this and the qualifications that will lead to that report writing?
Ashley, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, just to provide the additional clarity on that, I think the wording usually comes from the lead local flood authority as well. So that they would be the ones to check whether the person is suitably qualified, i.e. whether they have the relevant drainage, what's the word, qualifications, etc. And so again, like I've mentioned before, we would be following the lead local flood authority. Condition 27 does follow on from condition 26. Essentially, it is just to ensure that what the drainage scheme that has been built out in accordance with what was approved, and also in terms of it to satisfactory standards, and whether any further works are required once that drainage scheme has been installed and it's been tested, etc. So it's kind of like it's not a stat. You shouldn't just look at that condition on its own. It sort of follows on from 26 as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Councillor Horwood.
Yeah, if I can just sort of add a couple more comments, just to sort of like conclude the sustainability as well. The other thing that I sort of omitted was again, it's going back to this settlement hierarchy document, which was only recently gone through the Regulation 18 process, and its conclusion under paragraph 7.7, it specifically says, and it's one of the conclusive paragraphs: settlements within the village, hamlets, and clusters, which is what Noah's Ark is considered, are considered to be in unsustainable locations characterised by a lack of services and facilities and limited public transport, and small resident populations. These factors significantly constrain the ability of these settlements to support growth in a way that aligns with the principles of sustainable development. It's worth pointing out as well, so it was mentioned about housing and the need for rural housing, something we're all support. As members may know, Kemsing is currently allocated in the Regulation 18 notice a significant number of housing. But even here in Noah's Ark, if I'm correct, that there is also a site allocation already, which is utilising brownfield land. So it's not agreeing on the point of sustainability of green or green belt land. It's the fact that it's brownfield land, section NOA 1, which is, I think, proposing a significant number of housing units. So certainly in this community, there is already that, within the local plan. The fact that this site was not taken forward, I think is a sign that, sort of through, our own policies, through the local plan process, that it was not agreed that this specific site is one that is preferred over all the other sites we have identified in the local plan. The NPPF specifically directs us to direct development to sustainable locations. And we have, through our own planning policy settlement hierarchy document, highlighted that those sustainable locations and those preferred locations are the ones that have been put forward, and in agreement with the landowners through the local plan process. It's also worth remembering that I think I did read the Noah's Ark Residents Association comments on the planning portal, and they rightly highlight here that, Noah's Ark has 92 properties. This development plus the 7 homes for the redevelopment of the brownfield site to the east of this would mean an increase of 37% of the number of properties for a small cluster. That is a significant amount, on top of potentially the properties over the road as well. It's for those reasons that I just feel very unhappy with this application. I know the officer's comments around the digital tool seems to suggest this isn't, but clearly in the case of Lye, our own planning officers in the planning policy team, plus the work, the consultation with members, that figure with a connectivity tool is correct. That's broadly in line with what our officers have done. For this location, our officers have specifically looked at it and given it a score out of 2 for those purposes. If you look at the report as well, like the report talks about the proximity to Kemsing and the fact that this is, that is part of the argument as to why this is a sustainable location. Again, if we look at the site settlement hierarchy document, it does refer to, sort of settlements that were within 250 metres of a secondary tier settlement being deemed as sustainable. Now, in the officer's own report, it's talking about this site being 500 metres from the border of the Kemsing settlement, let alone onto, the centre of Kemsing and indeed the Londis, the primary school. It's again for those reasons that I don't feel that it is this is the right location or a sustainable location on those terms. And I think it is a grey area because clearly, on the one hand, we've heard arguments that, why people feel it could be a sustainable location because of its proximity to Kemsing. I'm not satisfied on that. And the NPPF, it does give a clear reason for refusal when you're looking at grey belt land, and if something is not a sustainable location under paragraph, let me just get the paragraph, I think it's 155C, that if it's not a sustainable location, that is a reason for refusal.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question of you, Councillor Allwood? You say the officers said a score of 2. I think the officers actually said a score of 39, if memory serves me correctly.
Sorry, yes, I'm talking about the settlement hierarchy document, where in our own settlement hierarchy document, it specifically says a number of 2.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, when I say the officers, I mean the planning policy officers rather than the
policy. Right.
development.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Shay, then Councillor Solander.
Thank you. Can I just come back a little on the housing, the settlement hierarchy point there? Because, what you say is correct, of course, but what's also true is that those things aren't binding on us at this point, because there isn't a local plan, it hasn't been adopted, and that hierarchy has been issued at the first stage of consultation and will be refined to go back out again before we get to the next stage in that. And we have to look at this planning application now, don't we? And I would appreciate some guidance from officers as to the extent to which we can rely on the consultation documents in making this decision tonight, please.
Aaron, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, obviously the documents in that form the settlement hierarchy, they form supporting documents to inform the local plan. And obviously the local plan is currently between Reg 18 and Reg 19. So the actual local plan itself has very limited weight because we're still working on it. So by the time it gets to Reg 19 and we've done the public consultation, it then becomes a significant weight at the time we then submit to the planning inspectorate. So at this point in time, it has limited weight in terms of that. I mean, it's an evidence base, and clearly it is our direction of travel, and that's where we would be heading. But it doesn't have the full weight of the local plan, and the NPPF, in effect, is where we have to go to in terms of how we assess applications at this point in time, because our local plan in terms of development in our district goes back to 2011 and 2015. So we're not there. It has had some weight, and it's a material consideration for you to take on board how much weight you give it. This is our assessment of it. It's really for you to reach a decision how you want to assess it.
Thank you. Councillor Solander and then Councillor Leyland.
Thank you. I'll be quick. It was just a very similar point. The local plan is our ability to put our preferences forward. It's not just the decision making. We don't have a choice but whether to consider this application or not. It's been brought to us. The settlement hierarchy describes itself in the opening paragraph as a useful tool. It is not a decision maker. And if the number that we expect the inspectorate to find this as sustainable, then and our officers find this as a sustainable location, then for me, that's the evidence that's in front of us.
Thank you. Councillor Leyland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not convinced that the flooding issues have been resolved or actually addressed or fully addressed, in my opinion. And also one of the other things, I don't know if you know what my mantra is with planning. Do you know what it is? So, you have to listen to the locals, their representatives and those people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Leyland. Is there any Councillor Granville?
Thank you, Chair. I think most of the arguments that have been going through my head, and a lot more too, have already been exercised by my colleagues here. I have to say at this point, I still feel very uncomfortable about the unknown technical details of the flood mitigation design. And I understand that the site, the permission won't go ahead unless that is satisfactory. But we have no recourse if we have a dry 6 months, if eventually the whole thing fails, and we have no way, there's no way back. There's absolutely no way back. It can't be tested unless it's wet. I'm concerned too about the sustainable location as described by my colleagues here. And I think those two items weigh slightly against my approving this at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that probably, no, it doesn't. Councillor Camp wants to come.
Always at the last. Yes, I've listened to what everyone's been saying, and a lot of my concerns have been voiced already, but I am concerned about the protection of the chalk stream. As a council, we said we would protect it. I'm not sure that those protection measures are as robust as they could be, and you can't mitigate the weather. And of course, that's one of those things. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm still thinking.
Well, if there's no further debate, which it looks as though there isn't, I'm going to move the item as per the agenda papers with the officer's recommendation, taking account of the late observations that you've all had a chance to read. So the item for decision is that planning permission be granted. All those in favour, please show. And all those against? The motion is lost. So now we're in a situation where, as the motion has been not approved, we need a formal. Councillor Forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was looking around paragraph 155C of the MPPF that when talking about development in the green belt and potentially grey belt land, 115C requires the development would be in a sustainable location with particular reference to paragraphs 110 and 115 of this framework. I would guess I would be grateful for officers' recommendations on some of the other elements during the debate, especially around the chalk stream and whether that could be justified sort of as another reason for refusal.
We need a formal proposal to refuse. So sorry? You can do. Yes, by all means, yes. Sorry, Councillor Thornton.
May I add to that before you comment? Because I think it'd be quite helpful to get all our concerns onto one bit of paper, if we may. Yeah. So I'm liking 115 for unsustainable location. I think this whole design matter about having people fix windows shut. I mean, for goodness sake, this is on the boundary that is next door to the AONB, and to say that someone has to have their window fixed shut in that scenario just is bonkers. So I think, is that a harm to residential amenity of the future? I don't know. There's a design matter there. So sorry, I'm just throwing out there as far as things that have been picked up in the debate, what we've discussed so far. Flood, I think, has been dealt with. Personally, I think the conditions are there for the flooding, but I know my colleagues, I think, feel separately about that. It's the whole question of sustainability, the location. could one go as far as saying, if we talk about settlement, this difference between the settlement hierarchy and the strategy that you're following here, is this MPPF paragraph 11 territory as far as being the fact that we should be on a plan-led system? Now, I think you're saying that's fine because we're being led by the core strategy, whereas we're kind of saying, well, hang on, the rules are changing. We should be on what we're currently saying we're going forward for on local plan. So I don't know if that's in there or not. I'm throwing that out there as far as what stuff that we've picked up on within this debate. Don't know if there's anything else to add. That's my thoughts at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. Aaron, do you want to?
Yeah.
Or after you?
I'll start off. Ash can pick up the Greenbelt stuff. In terms of noise, we won't be able to raise a ground of refusal. The technical solution, again, it's can a concern be addressed by a condition? And we have got numerous properties in our district where houses and apartments have been built in close proximity to railway lines, near to railway stations, where they have exactly the same arrangements in terms of rooms that just have fixed windows and trickle vents. We wouldn't be able to go down the line or just justify a refusal on that basis in this instance. So I would advise members to move away from that. In terms of sort of, I think you said flooding condition, but that the conditions we will address that. So again, on that point, in terms of the sustainability argument, I wouldn't want us to. We've got a tilted balance in terms of the policy. Our local plan, new version coming, doesn't have as much weight as what's in the MPPF. We've got to sort of try and assess the application before us rather than relying on information that's come in, and we know that's where we would like to be. But in terms of sustainability, as a settlement and as a place, that's more of an arguable case if members are minded to go that way. And we're just trying to flag that there is connectivity is always one part. I think what I was just trying to draw out was that our experience of when we tried to refuse applications on sustainability grounds is that that tool has been used and been found in a number of cases to be acceptable. And I will just raise, I'm not going to say you can't refuse it. I'm just saying, conscious that with Gorse Hill in Farningham, which we sat on this committee only just the other side of Christmas, we lost that and got costs against us for a very similar scored site. But just so you members are aware, and it's a completely different sites, but this site has other things going on it, and it's really for you to balance how you then consider this. But I think, Ash, if you just want to, we've been
pick up on a point. Can we not use a settlement hierarchy as evidence as to our reasons for doing it?
We can reference it, but I would have said it wouldn't hold as much weight. I mean, if Ash has been looking at while she's been talking to come up with some potential wording. So Ash, did you want to sort
of? Yeah, I think you've largely covered everything, Aaron. It was just a case of we would agree with Councillor Horwood that if you were minded to go down a sustainability reason for refusal, to focus it around paragraph 155C of the MPPF, because that is the test as to whether development of a grey belt parcel is appropriate. And then it has to meet all parts of paragraph 155. If it doesn't accord with part C, then it's not appropriate. And then we fall back to it constituting inappropriate development in the green belt, contrary to, paragraph 153 at that point, which is where we have to give substantial weight to that. And, going back to the old fashioned, how we used to be able to refuse green belt side of things. So that is the sort of drafting that we would use if we were going down that road.
Aaron, you want to come back?
Yeah, just one extra thing I just want to add it is members are aware that as part of their recommendation it was split into A and B, and recommendation B was a refusal on the basis that we don't have a signed section 106 agreement regarding affordable housing, and we don't have a signed agreement to rate into education contributions. This point in time we're making this decision, we would advise that if you are minded to refuse it, that's grounds in recommendation B, reason 1 and reason 2 are added to your third ground, which would be in effect will be sustainability grounds, to make sure that everything is picked up that is remained unresolved. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Horde. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, the only other policy I was thinking is whether from the core strategy, LO7, whether that could be included around development in rural settlements, or whether the core strategy sort of doesn't hold much weight anymore.
Yeah, rural settlements are the rural settlements that are identified in the previous core strategy doesn't include Noah's Ark as a settlement. Before we didn't have, it wasn't included within our settlement hierarchy. So if it would be slightly wrong to refer back to something which is not current.
Okay. So Councillor Horde, are you going to put a formal
Yeah, so
motion
indeed,
forward?
so as I understand it, the application is refused because it doesn't meet paragraph 155C of the MPPF, and that there is no signed section 106 agreement for the funding that Aaron mentioned. It was the education funding and affordable housing. Yes, at this stage.
Okay. Do you have a seconder?
Is paragraph 115 MPPF quotable here or not?
That's what we just
Yes,
said.
so
Yeah.
it had one, so I missed that. Thank you. Happy to second then.
Councillor Thornton's happy to second. So proposed by Councillor Horwood, seconded by Councillor Thornton. And the motion is to refuse the application. All those in favour, please show. Any against? 12-2. Thank you very much indeed. Now, before we move on to the next one, I'm going to suggest that we have a 5-minute comfort break in order to make people feel a little bit more fresh, ready for the next one. Thank you all very much for listening. Can we have you all back in places, please? Time is running on. And some of us have got homes to get back to. We appear to have lost councillors Granville, Shea.
Yes.
They're in the members' room. Come on, Councillor Shea, we're about to start without you. Yes, I know it will. There we go. That's it, right? Well, I'm very sorry. I can't suddenly magic milk from nowhere. I'm good, but I'm not that good. We appear to be missing Councillor Gran. Ah, there she is. Are we all good and ready to go? Milked or otherwise? We now come to item 4.2 on our agenda, which is the demolition of 2 existing barns and the erection of 1 dwelling with the associated works. I'd like to ask the officer, please, to present the application to us.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to start by saying Councillor Williamson referred this to committee in early December, but the application was revalidated in February when notice was then correctly served on KCC Highways, who own the grass verge. So the application relates to the demolition of 2 existing barns and the erection of 1 dwelling in its place with associated works. Location plan shows the 2 existing barns which are on site, and the long strip is the proposed access route from Blueberry Lane. 1 Singles Cross is located to the north, about 180 metres away, and just to the south out of the map is Blueberry Lodge, which you'll see shortly. So this simply shows a larger scale plot plan of existing and proposed, see how they compare. And a larger plan of the same thing. So 2 buildings spread to the edges of the site with 1 proposed building in the centre. This indicates the unofficial public footpath, which is a direct desire line, if you like, across the middle of the field from the top right-hand corner or north-east corner where there's a stile. But the official public right-of-way is the purple line, which runs, the solid line that runs to the north and the west of the dotted line. So it's slightly further from the site, although the proposals would still be visible from part of the path. So existing buildings, as such as they are, they're 2, they're both the same size, both the same height, 4.5 metres high, in a very poor state of repair. Proposed plans are for a single 3-bedroom dwelling, as you can see, with kitchen and living space, approximately twice the size of the individual buildings that are there. So it's almost exactly the same footprint or floor space, I should say. It's, I think, 2 square meters less. So a very marginal reduction, slight increase in volume and a very marginal increase in overall height of about 10 centimeters. That gives an indication of the elevations, proposed timber under a tiled roof. Details, though, would be subject to condition. Proposed section just indicates that it would be limited to a single-storey building with no space there for any accommodation within a roof. Proposed layout plan shows the detail of the dwelling with a turning head there, access point, 2 parking spaces, which meets the requirements, and adjacent to that would be cycle store and also a bin store. To the right, or the left-hand side, I should say, to the west would be a septic tank, so it'd be self-contained from that point of view. Landscaping's proposed around the edge of the driveway and the access, together with post and rail fencing. And existing trees around the site are to be retained with some enhancement planting also. At the access point, there will be some gates set into the site, and the bottom right-hand images show the gate there, 5-bar gate, and post and rail fencing along the outer boundary. There's relevant to note that there is quite a lot of planning history. It's quite convoluted, but in short, the change of use of the existing structures into 2 apart hotels benefited from permitted development in June 2020. This was followed by an application for external works to the building, together with the erection of fencing and gates at the entrance to the site. This was approved by committee in January 2022, and building operations were undertaken in 2024, which constituted lawful commencement of the permission and the related use. So the following slides, starting with this one, indicate what has been approved and is extant now. And I'll skip back very quickly just to compare that. So you can see there's slightly smaller as proposed turning head, less parking spaces, slightly more compact form. Moving on, the access point remains as it was approved. I note that the post and rail fencing detail is slightly different. That's the only change. The approved plans show both the same, 2 units, 2 bedrooms, clearly smaller in scale, but potentially a more intensive use. Externally, they were to be clad under a tiled roof. So passing through the site, we're now passing along Blueberry Lane. To the right-hand side is a gate into land adjacent to One Singles Cross. There's also a stile crossing there. You might just see in the centre where the arrow is, the footpath signpost, and that runs across the field, which we'll do in a minute. But travelling along the road further to the south, we're getting closer to the access drive itself, which is on the right-hand side. And the building there, you can see, is Blueberry Lodge, which itself is a former cattle barn. That's the existing access point into the field from which the proposed access would be taken. This is looking back from the access to Blueberry Lodge, northwards along the lane. Passing now into the field, so we've crossed the stile and are going to walk towards the site. So as you can see, it says there, Blueberry Lodge converted on the left-hand side. The application buildings at the moment, or I should say existing buildings, are almost invisible. As you get closer, you can just see the ridge to one of the buildings, and that's because the land drops very significantly as you get close to the site. Closer you get, you see slightly more of the building. As proposed, it will be approximately 10 centimetres taller. Looking back from the same point, Singles Cross on the left, and buildings in the background beyond that. Looking towards the access point with Blueberry Lodge on the right, set in the context of the site. Now, as we get much closer to the buildings, we're dropping down in level, and the buildings are more exposed. footpath, I would say again, public footpath is approximately 25 metres to the right-hand side of the route that I'm taking here, and the post that's given more towards a clump. There's a bush here at that point, and that's the official route. Again, walking along, you can then see, hidden behind the trees, you can barely see Blueberry Lodge, the white building, Blueberry Farm, conversion of 2 buildings to residential use, 2 former agricultural buildings, or 1 stables and 1 barn. Same again. Next one, again, as we're walking down, this is the route of the official footpath. Although there's no official style there, you can go through the undergrowth. There is a style, and it is adjacent to the building that is there, but that is not the official route. Again, having passed over slightly further to the west, looking back, you could see all those buildings in one image. So the full planning assessment and the recommendation is set out in the committee report and the papers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. I'd now like to invite, please, Zoe Brookman to come and speak to us. Okay. Right. There appears to be no speaker against the application here. So I'm going to invite the town representative. Yeah, you're right. Public speaker 4, Mr. Thompson. Yeah, okay. And Mr. Pico, you're coming after that. So when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, councillors. On behalf of the applicant, we fully support the officer's recommendation, which is to grant planning permission. We've worked positively with officers during the course of the application, which involved submitting for a pre-application. As set out in the officer's report, the site has lawful use as 2 apart hotels and extant permission approved in 2021, which comprise building operations to convert the buildings. Council have confirmed that the 2021 permission to develop the site for 2 apart hotels has been implemented under a 2024 LDC, which is well set out in the history section of the report. The applicant has been submitted as an alternative development to the apart hotel scheme. Although the applicant has not dismissed the prospect of fully implementing the apart hotels at this time, given the current economic climate and pressures of construction industry, as well as changes to planning policy, there is a need to consider all potential proposals for the site. In light of this, the proposal before you this evening provides an opportunity to develop the site for 1 self-built home. Having discussed the issue with the planning policy team, they have outlined that the council is committed to supporting access to both affordable and market housing for local people, which includes supporting people who wish to build their own home. As of the 30th of October 2025, there was a cumulative shortfall of 135 self-build plots in the district, the most identified need for which is for 3 and 4 bedroom properties. This alternative proposal therefore meets and addresses this need. With regards to the Greenbelt, the officer's report has concluded that the proposal, given the extant permission, does not cause substantial harm to openness, which is a very high bar. The dwelling will be less in footprint than the already approved apart hotels, will consolidate built form and reduce the intensity of the site. For this reason, the proposal will be acceptable in terms of visual and spatial openness. With regard to design, the dwelling is a simple form and traditional appearance, which is discreetly located on the site and within the wider landscape. Although visible from the public right of way, the home will not only reduce the intensity of development from the already approved 2 apart hotels to 1 dwelling, but also moves the built form away from the informal route. The proposed development will have no harmful impact on nearby dwellings. There's been no objections from Kent Highways, who have concluded the proposal is acceptable in highway safety.
You have 30
and-
seconds. Sir.
And parking provision. Conditions have been recommended by Kent Ecology and Environmental Health. I therefore respectfully request that you support the officer's recommendation and approve the planning application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Now, if I can call the parish representative, please, Mr. Raymond Pico. When you're ready, sir, you have 3 minutes. If you press the button at the foot of the microphone. Big green button.
Thank you. You've listened to the application and I'm afraid I'm going to be asking you to defer the discussion on it. Knockholt Parish Council were unaware until Monday, the 30th of April, that late Councillor Gary Williamson had called this into application, and it was on the agenda for this evening's Development Management Committee. The election for his successor was on Thursday, the 27th of March last week. This was known throughout Sevenoaks District Council, with Tony Marshall being announced as the new councillor covering Knockholt on Friday. Obviously, had Gary not sadly passed away, he would have told all concerned that it was going to committee well in advance. This has given the parish council very little time to review the application further, with the intention to present a statement and at the same time attempt to bring councillors Tony Marshall and John Grint up to speed on what has already been stated is a very complex application with a back history going back to 1998. An appeal was made to Democratic Services to postpone this item to the next meeting on the grounds of very special circumstances that could have been avoided had they thought to inform the parish council and other previous commentators well in advance. They refused. The parish council, along with our district councillors, requested that this committee defer on the item for further information to be sought and an essential site visit arranged to ensure a full understanding of the issues. I refer you to the 3 sections of Part 7 of the SDC Constitution, in particular Section 315. 313, any decision to defer a report should be taken before any other decision to approve or refuse the report. Should the committee be minded to refuse or approve the report pending deferral to await other information, then when the report comes back to committee, debate must centre around the effect of the additional information on the proposal, keeping in mind the first instance. Public speakers may speak again. There is also item 3.14 and 3.15, and with respect to the councillors here, I would guess that you know all about those. So further to your Democratic Services officer,
You have 30
Stephanie
seconds, sir.
Hayes, advised that having spoken with the planning officers, that the legal end date would not be dependent on your decision tonight. I respectfully ask that on behalf of the Knockholt Parish Council, that you agree to defer on this complex case. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to call Councillor Grimm as the local member. No, we actually have to carry on through the process until we get to the point of opening the matter for debate, and then at that point we can discuss a deferral or whether we have a debate. So no, I won't be. Whenever you're ready, Councillor Green, you have 4
Thank you
minutes.
very much, Chairman. Let me begin by saying that I wholeheartedly support what Councillor Ray Pico from Knockholt Parish Council has just asked of the committee. Councillors, this application before us is worse than the extant permission on the site. I've no desire to teach my grandmother to suck eggs, but I'd like to run through some basic principles about fallback positions in development applications. We're all familiar with the concept of a fallback position. This arises when an applicant wishes to undertake development which would normally be refused. Typically in the green belt, the proposed development would be harmful to openness and therefore inappropriate. The applicant would then point out that he has already got permission for a different development on the site, a fallback position which would cause even greater harm. Under these circumstances, the planning authority may grant the requested planning permission, accepting the argument that the existence of the fallback position, by virtue of its being greater harm, provides the necessary very special circumstances to justify the proposed development. Note the key ingredient here, that were the application to be refused, then the fallback would cause greater harm to the green belt. This is the normal proper use of a fallback. Comparison with the worst fallback enables the planning authority to minimize the adverse impact by approving the application before them. The planning authority minimizes the adverse impact by granting the new planning permission. But if we turn now to the present application, we see the applicant making a quite novel and extraordinary suggestion. He already has permission for the development of 2 apart hotels, and he wishes to use this as a fallback position in relation to his new application for residential development. But here's where it gets weird. The proposed development would actually cause more harm to the green belt than his fallback position. Most extraordinary. The volume of the proposed development and its height are both greater than the fallback position. This is the exact reverse of the normal and proper use of a fallback. If his application is refused and he instead implements his fallback, then the impact on the green belt will be less. The conclusion is obvious. The application should be refused to minimize the harm to the green belt. Allow the applicant to go ahead with his existing fallback permission. He has sought to confuse the issue by referring to changes in the new NPPF, which allow development in the green belt unless it causes substantial harm. The issue of substantial harm is a red herring. The NPPF has nothing whatsoever to do with the evaluation of a development proposal versus a fallback position. If you want to look at it in these terms, both the apart hotels and the residential development would cause substantial harm to the green belt. But there is no earthly reason why the council should grant permission to the one which creates the greater harm, as is proposed here. I ask you to refuse the application.
Thank you. Now, before we move forward and I put the recommendation as per the officer's recommendation, I'm going to ask legal advice, please, on the question of deferral for this item.
Well, yes, thank you very much. So the only ground for deferral is the need for further information. So my colleagues to your right will be able to tell you if more information is needed, but my understanding is that it isn't. We've got enough here to make a decision here today. As for the points on providing information, I know that this was emailed out in the same run as everything else. We didn't miss a deadline. I believe we emailed on the 25th of March, and that's when the information would have gone to the parish. That is how we act in every case, and we have these meetings every 3 weeks. My colleagues will be able to tell you if we need more information, they can confirm that. But if there is no need for it, then there are no grounds for a deferral.
So I'm turning to you chaps to say, do we have enough information in front of us to make a decision?
Yes, we do. But we wouldn't have put this recommendation to committee if we felt there was information lacking with the application. And just as a point of clarification, as well as the committee team sending out a notification of committee items, we sent a letter via email to the parish council on the 24th of March.
Thank you. So in which case, I'm sorry, the questions have taken, no, sir, I'm sorry. The questions have already happened. I'm now opening the matter for questions of the speakers, please. Councillor Purvis, followed by Councillor Horwood.
Can I ask the gentleman then, has he received the email, yes or no?
No, we need your microphone on for the benefit of the recording. Take the one next to you. That's all right. There we go.
I would say that I am not the parish clerk. I do not have the parish clerk's records, but we have a history which we have complained to the head of planning that there has been a number of applications which have not been received by us and have come in very late. So I would say, with the greatest respect to all of you, that we were not aware until Monday, the 30th of April. I would say, upon my honour, that I would not lie to you. And
I hope you mean the 30th of March, not April.
30th of April. And yeah, but we were not aware of it in March. We were only aware of it on the 30th of April. So I apologise if I cannot be any clearer than that. But I'm not the parish clerk, so I don't have her records.
Right. Let me try and clarify this. Do we get a read receipt or anything like that when we send emails to the parish?
Well, there's two instances. One is that the committee team will send out the committee notification of committee. So that has gone out. And we also send notifications to applicants, people that made representations on the application, and the applicant agent, so as well as the parish council or town councils. Those were sent out. I've sort of checked with our officers that actually produce them, and they've got a record of that they actually went out.
Lovely, thank you. Right, so I come back to questions of the speakers. I had Elizabeth Purvis next. Councillor Purvis, your turn.
That was my question.
Oh, you've asked your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hall was following, was it? Yours has been answered as well. Okay, are there any more questions of the speakers then? Councillor Darrington. Can you turn your microphone on here, please? There we go.
On the visual displays, could they be improved upon?
The visibility displays?
Yeah.
And who are you addressing the question to?
The applicant.
The applicant, right.
Yeah, so there's been no objection from Kent Highways as part of the application, and they've assessed the access as being safe. I'd be hesitant to increase the visibility displays any further because I think it would remove more hedgerow, which would be unhelpful, I think. But from a technical aspect, KCC Highways have accepted the proposal.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Darrington, or do you want to come back on it?
I thought it'd be quite a simple process to improve the displays there.
So the question you asked was, could they be improved?
Yes.
I've turned to the applicant. Is it possible that they could be improved? Would you be prepared to do that? It's outside the remit of this, but
the access has already been approved
Right.
under the extant permission already, so
Okay.
there's no need to, and KCC have found it acceptable.
thank you. Right, you heard what he said. There we go. Thank you. Councillor Thornton.
Thank you. A question for Councillor Grint, please. You mentioned the use of very special circumstances. I'm not seeing that being particularly referred to within our papers as being a reason for why they're looking at it to approve it under very special circumstances. So could you elaborate about your use of that wording, please?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor Thornton. Under normal circumstances, the use of a fallback position is used to present the the very special circumstances as a reason for approving a planning application. In other words, if we don't approve what's before us, then the fallback position, which is probably worse, either in terms of design or in terms of the direct impact on the green belt, the fallback position would be worse, and that downside represents the very special circumstances for granting permission of the applied for development. Yes, but I agree with you. There's no mention of very special circumstances here, and yet there is a lot of reference to the fallback position. The fallback position being that the apart hotels would be built. I don't understand what is meant by a fallback position in these circumstances without it being very special circumstances for building what is before us. I mean, what is before us is quite clearly something which would not normally get planning approval because it's clearly inappropriate development in the green belt. And therefore, the only reason for granting it would be very special circumstances. Neither the planning officer nor the applicant referred to very special circumstances, but that is the essence of their argument, that if we don't approve it, very special circumstances would be, well, yes, the fallback position. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course you may.
So Neil, sorry, Mr. Thompson, I understand that from what we've read, you haven't actually claimed very special circumstances as your reason for seeking approval on this. Would you like to elaborate further on that one? And I'll probably ask the officers in a minute when it's their turn.
Yeah, I think I understand what Councillor Grint is saying. Fundamentally, the lawful use of this site is C1 apart hotels. That's been approved by a prior approval, followed by a lawful development certificate by the council. So the lawful use of this site is not agriculture. It is C1 apart hotel. On that basis, it's classed as previously developed land in the Greenbelt. On that basis, the case officer has assessed the redevelopment of this site does not cause substantial harm to the openness of the Greenbelt under 154G of the NPPF. The extant permission is still a material consideration, which I think is what Councillor Grint is getting at, because it could be built out. But fundamentally, the lawful use of this site is hotels or C1 apart hotel.
Are there any more questions of the speakers? No, in which case I open the floor to questions of the officer, if there are any. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Chairman. As I understand it, there is a commercial use on the site now. There's been a change of use. Do they not need a change of use if they're going to be a residential dwelling?
Yes, it is part of the planning application.
Councillor Horwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's just really a clarification from the officers. Like, just as you say, it's a convoluted planning process. So when the prior notification of use from agricultural to the Class 1 hotel was put in, so obviously that doesn't require any sort of. There's no ability for the council to approve or refuse that because it is the prior notification process. That is essentially what changed it from agricultural to commercial. And because they had that prior notification, they put that prior notification in, they were able to do the hard standing to the site, which then allowed them to formally change it into a hotel under the planning application in 2020. That then allowed them to put the fencing and the entrance gates in because of the lawful development certificate. And then obviously we're in this situation that they've essentially got that permission. Is that what I'm thinking of, how we've got to this situation where, you know, under planning law, it's hard to, you know, there's no scope to well, I wouldn't say consider refusal, but like that's where we're in the situation where this has occurred with these two buildings with the extant position, and therefore your conclusions of the one dwelling.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, it started off as a notification, so we have no control over that at all. That is permitted under legislation. It was followed up by a lawful development certificate to show that they met the technicalities for that, which are quite straightforward. They're not very stringent tests. Basically, as you've said it, that is correct. It's one sort of incremental step to another, which is why we've ended up where we have. When they got the benefit of the prior approval, they then have to make a planning application for any external alterations that are proposed. And that was the application, the 2021 application came back to committee, and that was discussed at some length then. And that included the access details as well, or I should say, the planting and the other bits that went with it. And the external alterations themselves were quite significant, but again, with legal advice, they didn't go further than they were allowed to do so, and we consider that acceptable. So we're now in the position where they've lawfully implemented that, so they have that permission.
Councillor Malone, you wanted to have a word?
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. As the report makes clear, and as Councillor Grint alluded to, the proposal is slightly bigger than the two existing barns in aggregate. But I think the report concludes that that wouldn't have, on a comparative basis, an adverse impact on openness because it's a single unit in the middle of the site as opposed to two units on the edges of the site. In terms of your thinking about openness, how does the likely addition of residential paraphernalia, how does that impact any potential assessment on the impact on openness?
I think, well, first of all, I should say perhaps the test is because it previously developed land that the proposals can't cause substantial harm. So although it may be higher, it's only 10 centimetres higher, the volume is marginally greater, the footprint's slightly smaller, it's a more compact built form altogether. There's 2 parking spaces instead of 4, so those are all benefits. There's conditions that would restrict permitted development to extend further. In terms of general paraphernalia, I think they'd be fairly limited as to what they could do. There's restriction on outbuildings as well as a proposed condition. So I think the amount that they would do without needing planning permission would have only a very limited impact.
Councillor Solander.
Thank you. The reason for calling it in initially, apart from openness, also said that the buildings are not able to be converted. Are you able to comment on that? I appreciate you didn't call it in, but...
I think this goes back to the very start of a very long process. So, I think 2014, the first applications on this site for permitted development were under a class to convert the buildings to residential use, which did not permit significant reconstruction and alterations to the building. A later application, they were refused. So the later application under a different class did not have that requirement. So there are significant alterations that would be required, but they're permitted alterations.
Just to clarify, the application before us is to demolish those current buildings on sites, or just one replacement building up.
Councillor Thornton.
Thank you. The applicant's agent referred to a lack of self-build plots within our district and came up with a number of 130 something. What's the source of that? Is that something that we're told about? Because I'm not aware of people knocking on our doors saying, oh, I want a plot to build a self-built house on, please. Where does that number come from?
It's a number that we produce on an annual basis. And it's part of a requirement that the government's, or we have to record the number of people that register for self-built plots or that are interested in it. And then we will, then there's a period of time we would then say self-builds have been built out. So it's like a sort of like some have built out, so demand, this demand, it sort of goes up and down. But there is, from recollection, whilst I haven't got that specific year in hand, from previous understanding that dealing with other sites where self-build has been an issue, the figure of over 100 is certainly correct.
And we use our figures of people claiming self-build on SIL as our defence on that, do we? Or our balance
That's
on
part
that?
of our reason, yeah.
Well, if there are no more questions of the officer, I open the matter for debate, taking account of the late observations. The item for decision is before you. Councillor Thornton.
I like to get in early because then I don't have to worry about what other people have said or come in if I need to. I'm sorry for the parish because obviously they've been in turmoil because of the loss of Gary. It's lovely to see Gary's name on a paper again. I don't think we see it again on the paper. So, you know, we're a huge fan of Gary's, and usually we sit up and listen on his names or something. We all work with our parishes. Many are very similar to you. There is often miscommunication, but the planning team will have written to your parish, and I don't know what's gone on there at that stage. Or maybe there's a misinformation on the email, but that needs to be resolved.
Councillor Thornton, can I just say, I've actually seen the email that was sent out. It was shown to me just now.
Fine.
So we know it's gone.
something's
We
been
just don't know
sent,
it's arrived.
So something's gone wrong in the process, and I'm sorry for that. But actually, the planners have done what was required from their side. You didn't have a Gary, you did have a John. You've now got a Tony as well. You know, and enough. If anyone had written in, they would have been advised about the date on here. So I think there was enough reasons that that people should have known that it was coming. And I'm sorry I didn't hear about it until the last minute. Actually, looking at this site, obviously it's one that's we've seen before when it had the apart hotel. Look at those photos, reminding myself of the site. So I don't think I sat on committee when that came last time. Actually, when you look on a map, when you look at those hotels, a single dwelling rather than those two dilapidated barns. Yep, probably taking up less impact in the green belt. However, they're resi. They're not barns in the middle of the countryside. And you know, I represent a semi-rural ward, and I've used the debate myself that, you know, even if it's a modern-looking barn, it's still appropriate in the landscape, whereas a dwelling might not be. However, permission was granted to form apart hotels and 2 separate buildings worth of apart hotels. So you've kind of got the resi look already. You've got the access. You've got some lovely sheep and you've got lovely fields at the moment. So actually somebody mentioned about the and I've got it written down here as well, residential paraphernalia. To me, that's going to be the biggest impact on this site. It's going to be, as far as what's currently there at the moment, I think building wise, size wise, providing you can keep that cover, there's a reasonable amount of defence with soft landscaping, providing that can be kept with a single building. Actually, there should be, I do agree with the plans. I think it's less harmful. What will be harmful is the brightly coloured pillar box and the lit driveway and the trampoline and the the barbecue and the patio, and it's those kind of things that's going to have the bigger impact, I think, on what one's currently looking at. So I'm keener to see how that can be contained. Actually, I think, fallback position. Actually, I do agree. I think it is less impactful, but we need to be mindful of these kind of things. It's the lighting, it's that kind of thing that's going to have a bigger impact here than potentially the fact that it's 10 centimetres taller.
If memory serves me rightly, we can certainly condition lighting, but I'm not sure we can condition trampolines.
We had a site many years ago on Rooks Hill where residential paraphernalia actually was mentioned by the inspector as being a reason for refusal and the impact that it would have. But in that situation, it was national landscape. So I don't know if that makes a difference.
I've seen, going back 20, 30 years, domestic paraphernalia used to get referred to. And we had a number of appeal decisions where that we was unsuccessful in just on that basis. And it was part of a reason where we was actually opposing the development. And it was one of the added features where it's particularly prominent locations. I don't think we would say this. I mean, arguably, if you're going to have apartment hotels, they will probably have outside terraced areas, outside barbecue areas that they could do without needing any consent at all.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just add, there is a condition that relates to lighting as well, number 10.
Thank you. Bearing in mind we are in debate, not questions of the officers, but yeah, no. Does anybody else want to come in? Councillor Horwood?
Yeah, just to say, like, I think, you know, so I fully agree with Councillor Thornton's point, and, you know, sort of sympathies to the parish council on the, I guess, their frustration that they feel they didn't receive the correspondence. We obviously do have their response, paragraphs 30 to 34 in the report do give their written response to the planning application, and that is obviously what we all of us use, including the planning officers, to draw them to the conclusion. And generally, parish or town councils generally speak on what they have written in already. So we have got that to understand some of the frustrations around this application. You know, you can see from the history, I guess, the way we have arrived at this at this position where, you know, sort of we're looking at, is this proposed scheme more harmful than you know, the previous scheme with the two separate dwellings? You know, sort of sorry, the two separate parts hotels. And you know, I do agree that a central building that is slightly taller and that has a little bit more volume, sort of is I think better than two separate dwellings on a spatial point of view in the green belt. I think part of the frustration of this is the way we have arrived in that being acceptable in this location. But nonetheless, we have to look at what is in front of us, and I do feel that it is acceptable.
In which case, if there's no further debate, I propose the application as per the officer's recommendation, taking account of the late observations. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry? Yes. I will do it. Councillor Thornton, I'm told on very good authority that there is now milk in the members' room if you'd like to very quickly scuttle out and scuttle back. Go on, then, go. Are you suitably sorted with your milk? We're just awaiting the return of the legal officer before we can get started again. As we are now all present and correct, as soon as our officers are sat down, thank you very much, Jim. Good night. All of our councillors back. Right, we now have item 4.3, which is a single story rear extension. In the hands of Chris, if you'd like to present it to us, please.
Yes, good evening, members. So this is an application for a single-story rear extension and also two-story rear extensions. You've got single-story front extensions. You've got a loft conversion, which will also see the ridge height of the property increased, and the erection of an outbuilding with associated landscaping. So this is the site location plan. It's number 11 Crawshay Close, which is situated in a cul-de-sac accessed from Lakeview Road, and then slightly further to the west is Robbins Way. This is the existing site plan. The property has already been extended, and there is a decking area here. This is then the proposed site plan. So this element is your single-story rear extension, and then you've got a two-story element and a two-story element here, and the single-story front extensions. And then you have the outbuilding in the rear garden. These are the existing front elevations. So the property is part of a semi-detached pair and is set down from number 10 Crawshay Close on the left. This is the rear elevation, which just shows it being part of a semi-detached pair again. And again, you can see number 10 Crawshay Close set up. This is the proposed elevations from the front. So you've got your sort of two front extensions here, and then it would raise the ridge height to bring it level or slightly above number 10 Crawshay Close. This is the rear elevation. So you have your single-story element, two-story, and sort of this extension at first floor. This is the side elevation looking from number 10. This is the proposed side elevation from number 12. This is the proposed ground floor plan. So you've got the single-story extension here, two-story extension here. This is the proposed first floor plan. The proposed second floor plan as part of that loft conversion. This is a proposed section through the building from number 10's side. And then this is another section from the other side. This is a 3D render of the front elevation. So you can see in terms of eaves height, it's set slightly up here. And then this is the 3D render of the rear elevation. 1 point to note, views to this section of the property from wider vantage points are limited. As you can see, there isn't sort of much of a gap between the two properties in terms of number 12 and number 10, with number 10 being sort of significantly extended over previous years. This is the proposed outbuilding ground floor plan. And then these are the elevations of the proposed outbuilding and a 3D render of that same outbuilding. This is then the views from within the site towards the and beyond the rear boundary. This is from near the rear boundary looking back towards the application site. So this is where you'd see the various extensions to the rear. This is looking towards number 12. That window, in terms of from previous planning applications, it serves a kitchen, but as you can see, it is already overshadowed. This is the view from within the application site towards number 10. So earlier on when I was talking about that 3D render and views being limited, these are the extensions which are screening views towards that rear elevation of the application site. And yeah, as you can see, it's been significantly extended at number 10. This is a view towards the front of the property as existing. This is to show you how the other properties within Crawshay Close have sort of evolved over previous years. Historically, they were more unified and uniform in their appearance in terms of within their semi-detached pairs. This has been sort of gradually changed over the years. So as you can see from this one, this property at number 3 has had a significant front extension. And then here you can see there is a stepped ridge between the number 5 and that side extension, which again is sort of impacting that unified appearance between the two semi-detached properties. And then this is that site directly next to the application site at number 9 and number 10. You can see at number 10 has got that large front extension. Number 9 has this side extension, which was allowed at appeal. And then this is a view towards another property in Robbins Way. The reason I've included this photo is to give you kind of an idea on how height differences when it comes to ridges are actually perceived from street scenes. Having measured this from street photography, the distance between this element, this sort of projection and the main core of this dwelling at number 54 is closer to 1 metre. Our application site is 80 centimetres. And then yes, the full planning assessment recommendations set out in the committee papers, and you'll note the late observations.
Thank you, Chris. I'd now like to invite Graham Dyer to come and speak, please. Whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here to speak on behalf of the 4 directly impacted neighbours, all of whom have submitted individual comments to the proposal that I'm sure you've already read. This application is not a modest extension, but represents a cumulative and excessive enlargement of a previous extension, adding further bulk at ground level, first floor, roof area, and a new outbuilding. Indeed, the new expansion is excessive enough to trigger the community infrastructure levy. In his report, the planning officer acknowledges multiple individual harms, but fails to take account of the cumulative and impact resulting from multiple policy violations. When considered cumulatively, the proposal results in overdevelopment, loss of symmetry, failure of the 45-degree light rule, and an oversized outbuilding. These harms conflict with many policies, EN1, EN2, SP1, and SP2, and significantly outweigh any benefits, with significant harm to all of the immediate neighbours and the local character for the minor benefit of one couple. I'd like to comment on and dispute a few comments in the planning officer's report. Loss of light. He acknowledges that proposed development would fail the 45-degree loss of light test, but dismisses this, believing the affected room is a kitchen and therefore not habitable. This room is actually used as a kitchen diner, which I believe makes it habitable, and we actually take all of our meals in that room. On the topic of sunlight, he then estimates that the rear of number 12 is overshadowed continuously throughout the day. This is not true, and there's a good period in early afternoon where the sunlight falls onto the rear of the house and the patio, giving light to the window as it travels past the side of number 11 and before it falls behind the aforementioned trees. Moving on to the design character, we believe the planning officer has materially underweighted the cumulative impact of changes, including the importance of the mirrored semi-detached character, contrary to EN1. Design principles normally state you should avoid increasing the roof height of a dwelling or altering the pitch of the roof, and an extension should respect the character of the existing building unless there is a strong justification. Strong justification for alternative approach. The residential character assessment specifically calls out the mirrored semi-detached character of the area. The application breaches all of this, and there is no strong justification in favour. The extension will change the roof height, the pitch, the common dormer windows shared by the semi-detached house, paired by raising up the front walls of the house to convert the dormer windows into regular windows. None of the many submitted plans show this, as it would highlight the complete loss of symmetry. You can refer to the photo in front of you to see how it would work. There is no example we've seen in the local area of the main roof of a semi-detached house being mismatched.
You have 30 seconds.
And once the application is granted, this will set a precedent for anybody else to follow on. The rear extension constitutes an overdevelopment, already having extended 3 metres, and this adds another 3 metres. Additionally, the outbuilding is excessive in both scale and height. A suitable building could be accommodated within standard permitted development rules, which set acceptable limits, and this would lessen the impact on all of the neighbours who will have a large imposing building added to their outlooks. This is far greater in size and proximity to borders than any other outbuildings in the area, and again sets another precedent for future
So that's time,
applications.
I'm afraid. We did give you an extra 10 seconds for the.
Sorry, thanks very much.
Thank you. If I can pronounce this correctly, Grashina Miedzinski?
Ready?
You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Chair, councillors, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Grażyna. I'm the resident together with my husband, Andrew, who is watching from the lobby patiently there. We've been living in Croce Close for the last 15 years. My aim today is to briefly explain and address directly some of the objections that have been raised, because we understand that we expected the objections to be raised. The proposal has been carefully designed to be comparable in scale with other extension and outbuildings in Croce Close. Therefore, it does not exceed the typical plot coverage already set in Croce Close. When it comes to the roof line, we do acknowledge that the proposed roof line is higher than the other half of the semi-attached pair. However, there's already a feature of Croce Close where a pair is not symmetrical in the roof height. It's between numbers 9 and 10, and also as demonstrated by the planning officer in Robbins Way. The overall scale of the building remains in proportion with both our immediate neighbors and the wider street. When it comes to light, the key planning test on light is whether there is a material reduction compared with current levels. And as per planning officer recommendation, there isn't. When it comes to the unifying street scene, the character of Croce Close has changed significantly, even over the time we've been living there. The changes start as you enter Croce Close, where a semi-detached building has been developed into a terraced property with a side entrance facing Croce Close. There is a detached house in the garden of a semi-detached house. We have developments, single-site developments of a semi-detached house into the front gardens, as well as visual design that connects two pairs of semi-detached properties into effectively a terraced design. As a result, there is no longer symmetry in Croce Close. Finally, the proposed plans include green roofs, as well as solar panels and expansion of the existing air source heat pump. This will make the property effectively self-sufficient when it comes to power generation. This is the example that we want to set.
You have 30 seconds.
To make sure that an aging stock, like semi-detached houses from 60s, can be well developed to current standards. We hope that our application will be judged consistently and fairly against not only the planning policies, but also the examples and approved planning that was already done in Croce Close.
Thank you very much. The Town Council representative, Dr. Marilyn Canning.
Thank you. It's on.
Dr. Canning, you have 3 minutes starting.
Yes, thank you. This is a quiet, small close of 14 houses of similar semi-detached design. And we felt on the town council that this proposal was overdevelopment of the house size, the height, the roof, and so it gave an inappropriate roof line. The inappropriate treatment of the facade causing a loss of the unifying generally street scene. The impact on the street scene of altering the appearance of the pair of semis, the overlooking of the neighbours, loss of light and amenity to immediate neighbours, including those on Robbins Way, and overlooking of the neighbours, we felt was an overdevelopment of the site. I appreciate that they put in, proposing to put in more sustainable measures, including the green roof on the building in the garden. But we felt that this was an overdevelopment of the site and that that it would be detrimental to the neighbours at number 10 and number 12. And we would like to advise that should permission be granted, that surface water must not be directed to the sewer. We have quite a few problems in that part of Sevenoaks that the water companies need to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the local member, Councillor Lehman. You, sir, have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
I'm very grateful, Chair. Thank you very much. So, by instinct and temperament, I am, as far as possible, in favour of residents who want to develop and improve their properties. But I also believe that we should listen carefully to their neighbours who should be, and we should cause minimum distress to them. And we should also try and uphold the interest we all have in good development and good design. So I'm pleased that this application has come before you, and I'm sure you'll give it careful consideration. As has been said, this is a semi-detached property, and the two partners in a semi-detached property should not diverge from each other too much. They certainly shouldn't clash with each other, and I think if you look at these designs, they're not going to mirror each other at all. They're going to clash in quite a dramatic way. And the roof, I mean, I saw the one from the other road, but it's having two properties joined together, but with different heights of roofs, is going to look very strange. Now, the officer has quite pointedly said in his report that these properties are not of any, I quote, not of any real architectural merit, which I thought was a bit harsh, to be honest. But this is about the character of this cul-de-sac, and colleagues, I'm wary of an argument which says because we've let something slip or things have changed, that we should therefore allow a lot to change in an area. That was my first point. Second point is about the outbuilding. I'm bemused about why it has to be 3 meters tall. It's previously been turned down under the LDCPR rules because it was above 2.5 meters, and I know that that doesn't apply in a planning application, but the 2.5 meters must be there for a reason. 3 meters seems to be excessive in my mind. What constraints are there for the future, and isn't everybody then going to take it as a green light to build these sorts of constructions in their garden of this size? And it's clearly, I think it's clear that it's going to be used not just for home working, but for home business operations, and that there will be people visiting the site because that outbuilding is there, as I understand it, and that will create noise and disturbance that the neighbours have suggested. Now, this is the major extension. It's bound to impinge on neighbours. I think we should look carefully at the privacy, disturbance and light arguments, and I'm sure you will. I'm grateful to the committee for its consideration of this, and I'm sure you'll give it your careful attention even at this late hour.
Thank you. So I'm mindful of the time. It's 10:05. At what point do we need to think about suspending standing orders? Well, shall we propose that we suspend them? Yep. And then we can just crack on and get it finished. Do I have a seconder?
We're just going to get the wording.
Right. We'll get the proper wording for you and then I think it's under here actually. All right. Okay, we'll do questions to the speakers first. Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Thornton, you've already got your hand up.
To the applicant, I'm sorry, I haven't seen your name written down, so I can't even have an attempt to try and do such a
That's
good
perfectly
pronunciation.
fine. It's Grażyna, yeah.
Thank you. Again, I probably won't be able to repeat that back to you, but thank you very much. Can you just clarify to me, do you have, are you generating side access? Because at the moment you don't, have you got side access at the moment? Hang on.
There is a 1 meter distance from the existing wall, which will remain to the border of with our neighbors in number 10, and then their property is again 1 meter away from the border.
So that relationship remains the same. Okay, fine. So if you wish to have people in your, if it is an office that you're going to accept people at the back, they can get to you without going through the house.
Yeah, I wanted to really clarify that point because basically the reason for that space is my husband is a financial advisor. So as you can imagine, he needs to have confidential conversations. At the moment, he's stuck in a room 2 by 2 because the upstairs is very small. And the reason for him is to have a confidential space where he can have calls with clients. So it's not running a business. It's as you know, I work from home 2 days a week as well, and I need a space for to do that. So just wanted to make sure that there's a clarification on that because that's been misrepresented quite heavily.
And the way of working has changed considerably.
Thank
you, Councillor Thornton. Are there any further questions of the speakers? No? In which case, oh, Councillor Shay, yes, of course.
Thank you. Can I just pick up on that point, if I could, please, on the use of the office? So I thought I'd read somewhere in the papers as well that this was about allowing client access to the office. Is the work all online, or does it involve in-person consultations as well?
So my husband runs meetings in central London, in Schroders Bank. There is an office space where he hosts meetings because it's facilitated. It has big screens. It's a safe space for client to have those conversations. So no, well, we might have friends over, but he has meetings in central London.
Yeah,
and one other question, if I may, Chair. You mentioned the green technologies. I didn't see those marked up on the drawings anywhere. What did I miss?
I'm not quite sure why they haven't been captured on the drawings. To be honest, we already have a air source heat pump in place. It's operational, it's powering, it's heating the home. The reason why we didn't expand into solar panels is at the moment the roof space is too small to actually warrant the investment. So that's why there is also the benefit of the enlarged roof space that we can put the solar panels on to power the house and the air source heat pump. But yeah, those technologies, and we can make them conditional, they are part of the design.
Councillor Solander.
Thank you. Can I ask, is there going to be a 2-floor extension with your semi-detached neighbour? So you're effectively building out 2 floors beside their property?
It might be easier to show it on drawings. So we are adding one level on top of existing single-story extension. So that will go up by 1 level, and then we will. There's currently we have an L-shape extension. So the 1-story extension will be just equalizing with the current line of the higher L, if you know what I mean. So yes, they already have a brick wall. Yes, yeah, yes.
Are there any more questions of Councillor Shay?
Thank you. Sorry, I did want to ask Mr. Dwyer about the light concerns in a bit more detail. So you have currently 1 metre, is it, of single story? No, must be a bit more than a metre of single story at the moment.
Sir, can you put your microphone on when you answer the question, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the existing extension next to the kitchen is 1 story and goes out about 3 metres. So as Grace just mentioned, that the build then is to add another story above that, and then have another 1 story 3 metre extension further down the back. So it'll be going out about 6 metres from the house.
And the rooms adjacent to that, upstairs and downstairs, you've got your kitchen diner
Yeah, kitchen
downstairs.
diner downstairs, and then upstairs is I guess officially a bedroom, currently used as a sort of home office.
I'm just getting some advice on the exact wording to extend the meeting if we need to. Are there any further questions of the speakers? No, in which case, right now, I move that in accordance with Rule 16.1, Part 2 of our Constitution, that members extend the meeting if necessary beyond 10:30 p.m. to enable the committee to complete the business on our agenda. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you. Right, so now we move on to questions of the officer. Councillor Thornton, Councillor Granville.
2 questions, sorry. Firstly, trees all protected, even the ones at the back, no problem at all, they're staying put.
Yes, they're not proposed to be removed, and we have a condition which requires details of the foundations for the outbuilding to make sure that they're not going to result in
Good,
root
because they seem to be
severance.
under the canopy, which is what was worrying me, so there's protection there. And secondly, can you just talk us through the LDCPR of 25, please?
Sure. So we had a lawful development certificate within, I can't remember the exact date, but within last year. It was refused because it was too tall. So it went beyond what you're allowed under permitted development. Other than that, in terms of its footprint and everything, that all remained the same. But yeah, it was a height issue that meant that it had to be refused.
Okay, so a way of regularising it is to come through with this application. Is what's in this application what was requested for in the LDC? Is it saying?
So, just a clarification, the LDC is not making a judgment of the acceptability of the scheme. It's saying, is a planning application required for it? And obviously this is now the application's in, so there's no judgment on the.
Right. Councillor Granville, you were next. Councillor Cole, you were next.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're very welcome.
I wanted to go on to point number 40, paragraph 43. Number 12, Crochet closest neighbour. And where the proposed development will fail the 45-degree test on plan and elevation against the closest rear window. The fact that it's a kitchen, that has a kitchen in it, but it's also a living room. It's a room that's used to live in. Why does that mean, can you just explain why the 45-degree test, which will plunge this room into absolute darkness, doesn't actually make the proposal unacceptable?
Sure. So touching on the kitchen element to start with, it's not a habitable room. I know one of the speakers mentioned it was a kitchen diner. I have actually covered that under paragraph 44, where I've said even if it was habitable, it's so overshadowed that this wouldn't actually cause any additional harm. It passes the 45-degree test on elevation against the first floor windows, just because I know that was mentioned earlier. But in terms of the ground floor window, whilst it doesn't pass, that room from planning history is not habitable. There is a separate dining room over in the sort of extension that they've had at the side. And yeah, even if it had failed and that was habitable, we still wouldn't say that there was such a level of harm to warrant refusal.
I'm only asking because this is probably for debate, but I live in a semi-detached and I've been similarly blighted, so I understand what this would mean to the neighbour. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Cole, you were next.
Chairman, thank you. Just clarification, please, on the size of the outbuilding. I haven't got the maps in front of me, I'm afraid. I'm unable to draw them back, but it shows a height of 3 meters. I think it shows 3,000 on the scale. And then when you look at the, if you like, the floor plan, it shows 18800, which to my mind is 18.8 meters. I appreciate they're not drawn to exact scale, but it looks no more than about 3 times the height. So are we talking about something that's in excess of 50 feet in length, or are we talking something that's maybe 25 foot long?
Sorry, I'm just opening up the plans if you bear with me.
So we're just measuring it at the moment, so we'll give you figures.
So in terms of height, it is 3 meters. In terms of the ground floor plan, were you talking about the sort of the depth of the building?
No, on the mapping I saw earlier today, from sort of the point that's 500 mil from, is it Robbins Way, coming back into the garden towards number 11, the numerical figure given along that plane was 18800.
Chris, could you put the plan back up, do you think, of the... Was that the one, Councillor Cole?
It was one of a sequence, so that's obviously looking at it from above. This would have been looking at it from sort of the flank aspect, as if you were looking at it from, I think, number 10, but it just showed the height. It gave the 500 mil distance from the stone wall. It showed the 2,500 mil height, the 3,000 to the top of the skylight, and then the distance along the ground at 18800.
So I believe the figure you're referring to is the sort of land level rather than a numerical sort of part of the building. So it's not really to do with the height or dimensions of the building, it's the land level that it's set on.
Right. Thank you.
And just one other question.
Yeah,
if I may.
sure.
Thank you. So the canopy, which again I appreciate that with the CAD drawings may not be exactly accurate. Having a small canopy over a doorway, maybe 900 mil, it is one thing. Certainly, if the canopy extends 750 or 1,000 millimeters from the door, i.e., almost over the boundary to next door. When you have a canopy which extends, from memory, almost along the entire flank wall, that's a hell of a lot of water that's going to cascade off of that pitched roof, literally on the borderline. What measures could be put in place to prevent next door ending up with a very, very soggy and wet, almost unusable section of their pathway?
So I understand you're talking about the sort of timber canopy that runs down the side of the dwelling. We've not got any measures within the application to mitigate in terms of drainage. In terms of whether we could condition that away, we could potentially look at whether there's any conditions we could attach if needed. I would consider that level of harm or impact to be called for that to be relatively low, though. So I wouldn't use that to justify conditioning. But yeah, I would consider that level of harm to be relatively low.
It may seem a little obvious, but could we condition putting a gutter on it?
That would be challenging because it would then, it's kind of right up to the boundary. So you'd risk the guttering going over beyond the red line onto neighbouring property. So that would be a challenge.
Sorry, we can't take questions from the gallery. I do apologise. I'm very sorry. It would be challenging because it would overhang the. Okay.
So Chris, do you mind just putting that drawing up? Because there is a, on this, yeah, Chris, you want to put it up?
Chair, thank you. I'll probably mention this during the conversation later, but I appreciate what the officer says. But you're working on the basis that the canopy will already extend to the boundary line. It's a 1,000 millimetre wide canopy. If you drew that back to 900 mil, which is still a substantial canopy, and you can put your box guttering or half guttering on the end, so you're still not extending over the boundary line. That would be a simple cure.
May I ask the applicant, would that solution, if it were practicable, be acceptable to you?
We would have to look at the plans and whether how the design, overall design would look like, but I guess we can, yeah.
Just to come back on it, actually looking at the plans, it looks like the roof of that canopy is open. So it's not actually got kind of slats or timber across it, because from when I'll show you the elevation, you can see the brickwork through it. If I find zoom again. So here's the canopy, and you can see the brickwork through. So it doesn't actually look like it's closed at the top. Yeah.
Well, in which case, then there's not going to be a waterfall coming off it, is there? No. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Granville.
Could we just be certain of that?
Councillor Cole, are you still wanting to come back against that?
Sorry.
If I may, maybe the applicant could confirm. I appreciate from the drawing, it just looks like wooden slats, but then you question, well, it's not a canopy because it offers no protection. So would that be some sort of polycarbonate roofing, some see-through clear roofing? I can't see the point of someone just putting a 24 wooden, 4x2 timbers at a 45-degree angle off the side of their house if it serves no purpose.
Can you explain, please, whether there is a roof on this canopy or there isn't?
There isn't. It's a pure design choice. We want the garden to be then designed in the sort of Mediterranean style, where we would have plants climbing over the wooden structure. So that's the purpose, to eventually have actual plants over there.
So it's a pergola rather than a roof?
Yeah.
Lovely,
yeah.
thank you. Exactly, yeah. Councillor Cole.
I'm grateful, Chair. I'm grateful to the applicant. Maybe my mind was drawn when you look on mapping, you can already see a canopy over the side door.
No, that's fine.
But thank you for explaining.
No problems.
Councillor Shea, I do apologise.
In amongst all that, did we get any measurements for the outbuilding other than the height?
They're on the plan, I think. The floor measurements are.
Sorry, which particular?
Sorry, I thought you were looking at all three of the dimensions when you were measuring, and I could hear the clicking earlier on the measurement tool. I thought we were looking at all the dimensions of that outbuilding.
The floor plan of it, Chris, if you can pull it up.
So did you want, sorry, like the width, or did you want the total floor area, or? Right, okay. So in terms of its external floor area, so outside walls, it's 54.94 square meters. In terms of its width, it's 7.1 meters. And then it's quite a sort of irregular shape from front to back because one side is sort of smaller than the other. So at its deepest, it is 11, and at its shortest, it is 4.4.
Thank you. And that's not including the decking, I take it?
No.
Thank you. I think that probably concludes questions of the officers. So I move the matter as per the agenda papers, taking account of the late observations. We are now in debate. Go on, Councillor Thornton, why don't you go
Nobody
first?
else puts their hand up. Unless the local member wants to go first, or somebody from town wants to go first.
I'm welcome.
Yeah,
I'm
go on.
happy to do that if you like, Councillor Thornton. Thank you. Thank you. I think, as Councillor Lehman said, I'm certainly not against people improving their homes and shouldn't be prevented from doing so. I do worry here about the impact on the street scene. I take on board absolutely what Chris says about the changes that have happened locally, but all of that has maintained the timber facades of the original build. There are extensions to the side, but they're always set back, and they're secondary to the original build. I'm not familiar with any of them having stepped the roof line. And I take the point about the one on Robin's Way, but that is also a subservient extension that you were showing there to an existing house. So I'm concerned about the impact from the street scene, and because of the differences between the two sides of the adjoining properties, I think it's a very significant difference, because the windows on one side are dormer windows at the front on the first floor, and these ones would now be put in the same plane as the front. It introduces a bay window at the front that doesn't exist elsewhere in the streetscape either. And then to the back, we're going from a 3-bedroom, modest semi-detached house to 4 or 5 bedrooms, but over 3 stories. I think it just feels very, very lopsided between those two properties. And it feels like a very, very significant development on a modest plot.
Councillor Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I always want to listen to what the locals have to say, and I can only observe from, my experience of that area of my lifetime and how it's changed already. And when you drive around the lakes area, as this is part of, the styles have changed so significantly from over the years, from when they were first put in there, and everyone's put their individual touch over there. It's not like we've got a conservation area here. We have got some character here. And I hear what you're saying about how the rendering is going to change. Personally, I like the look of the office. I think it's a good use of that triangular end of your garden, which isn't doing very much at the moment. And if it's, we all need to accommodate how we're working these days. And I think it's a good space. And its proximity to Robin Way, I can see, it was actually a question I was going to ask Councillor Canay about when she mentioned Robin Way. I presume it was about the office space. 3 meters seems quite high, but in that sort of area, Sevenoaks, that's not, the distances between the buildings aren't great. I do think that the fact that the house next door has already been substantially extended. I do listen to what Councillor Shea is saying there, that some of the design features being brought into here are novel and different. But then again, you drive around the lakes, and what used to be low-level single bungalows have all been gone up a story. They've all got their dormers at the back. That there is no conventional style anymore. So yeah, is this particular close any more unique than anywhere else within the lakes? I don't know it well enough to know that the answer to that one. Yeah, so I'm I'm likely to support at current stages.
Councillor Granville.
Again, I think it's just really important that we're all able to extend our homes to suit the lives that we lead. And I'm really absolutely not against that. And this seems to be a very well thought out plan. But I have to say that although it doesn't seem to be a planning reason, the overshadowing of the neighbours of number 12 will be very hard on them. And there's a big difference between cast shadow from trees and then actually a sort of block of 6 meters right next to your where you have your breakfast, where you read your newspaper. I can't think that this could be anything but really hard on the neighbours, and for that reason I'm very squeamish about it, but thank you. I shall listen to the other comments.
Councillor Cole, and could you turn off your microphone, Councillor Granville, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I echo the sentiments of my colleagues in relation to allowing, within reason, residents to personalise their homes and extend and expand where possible. And I'm torn, and I will enjoy listening to the rest of this conversation, because I think what the applicant has put forward and the clever use of space is actually, I think, quite eye-opening, and in the right setting, maybe there could be lessons learned for future designs and future remodeling of properties. What concerns me, though, two main things really, is the ridge height on that semi-detached property. A substantial difference in height, 800 millimeters. And I remember a case up in Castle Hill where I think we were talking about 600 millimeter, and that caused consternation, and that they weren't even on a semi-detached building. But coupled with the outbuilding as well, the phrase that springs to mind is trying to fit a quart into a pint pot. It looks busy, it looks fussy, it looks I wouldn't say overbearing, but just the mass and I feel uneasy with it. There's almost too much going on, and it's almost dominating the plot. And I think that, together with the difference in ridge height, would, for me at the moment, I'm erring against. But as I say, I'll happily listen to other comments as it's put forward.
Councillor Solander.
Thank you, Chair. I live in a semi-detached and have a garden office for private work. The garden office was built under permitted development, so it's not 3 meters tall. It's not necessary. It would be absolutely crushing to our house if our neighbour built a 2-floor extension out the back, and just in terms of neighbourhood amenity. And it's, in my eyes looking at this, there's the raised roof line as well. There's 3 reasons this is overdevelopment and affects neighbourhood amenity, and I'm leaning against.
Thank you. As there appears to be no further. Oh yes, there does. Councillor Purvis. Sorry, I didn't see you. You need to put. That's better. That's much better. And then Councillor Hall, did you want to? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm speaking now. Good. Right. I think there's too much crammed into the plot. You've got a single story rear extension. You've got a garage extension in the front. You've got a first floor rear extension. You've got a loft conversion with a Juliet balcony. You've got a roof extension. You've got a timber canopy. And then finally, you've got the erection of a pretty large outbuilding in the rear garden. So I think basically it's overdevelopment, too much in a small space.
Thank you. Councillor Horde.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sort of struggling with this one because I do recognise that the street scene in this area has changed sort of dramatically from sort of, the sort of semi-detached uniform appearance to obviously some of the sites, some of the nearby properties having, especially like front extension sort of porches. So it's a strange development for a street scene. The report as well is sort of, in various paragraphs, it talks about harm, sort of harm from the design, but sort of always concludes, but that's not significantly enough to be significantly harmful. And then there's another paragraph about something else being harmful, but not significantly harmful. I thought it was interesting, paragraph 33, where it sort of says the alterations to the rear elevation cannot be said to be particularly attractive. Because, when I looked at that on the plans, I was a little bit horrified. I don't think it's a nice sort of thing to look out to, even if it's at the rear of the property. There will be other properties that can sort of see that. And it's a strange feature for a design of the property. But it's a real hard one, because I think, it feels like overdevelopment. The ridge height, the design of the property just feels too out there compared to even some of the neighbouring properties. I'm just really torn as to whether that is enough to sort of refuse it on, EN1 grounds. Any other comments would be welcome. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Shea, followed by Councillor Ball, followed by Councillor Leyland.
I just wanted to pick up on things that have been said a couple of times about the style in the area, and absolutely the Lakes area has evolved over time, and a lot of the houses that were bungalows have gone up. These obviously are not houses that were ever bungalows, so it's kind of outside of that area anyway. But there has been a lot of careful work through the character area assessments that have existed up to now, to preserve quite a lot of that character, even as the houses have got taller, and it has preserved some of these facades and original architectural thought that went into these buildings when they were first built. So I just wanted to point that out. The area hasn't changed beyond all recognition. It has evolved, it has grown, but it's not completely out of character with the sort of 30s half timber built that you'd see, that you might have seen originally.
Thank you. Councillor Ball, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, when I heard Councillor Cole saying, "Oh, it's such a clever use of space, etc.," I thought, "Oh, he's seriously going to be in favour of this," and then suddenly he wasn't. I actually think it is a clever use of space as well, and I understand that the close has a variety of styles of houses and whatever, and that's just the way it's evolved. And to be frank, I quite like it, and at this stage, I'm inclined to vote for it.
Thank you. Councillor Leyland.
He said everything I wanted to say, actually. Having said that, I think the word is, there's been a lot of work being put into the design of this, and it's different and it's modern. And when you get to my age, you understand that's what's coming down the road and that's what's going to happen. So I'm in favour of this. Thank you.
Young.
Thank you. I haven't seen any more hands. I apologise if I've missed anybody, but I don't think I have. In which case, then I put the motion as per the agenda papers, taking account of the late observations. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Let's vote. Why don't I have to? No, I did vote first. I do. I want to vote in favour. Yeah. So I'm voting in favour of the application, which makes it.
Sorry, Chair, was your vote
8.
casting? I didn't hear the numbers.
No. It was, you were 8 and 8, but they didn't count me in the first time round. So there's no need for a casting vote at all. It was just simply that I voted in favour of it first time round. In which case, at 10:40, I close the meeting. Thank you all very much for coming. See you next time. There we go. Job done.